Okay, guys, we live streaming to YouTube. Welcome to all of you who's already on the session. We're just admitting all the colleagues into the session, and I'm just talking now that you can do your sound check and make sure your sound is working. And we will start in about 6 minutes' time or so. Morning to those who just joined in. We're just saying a few words that you can check your sound. Um, just admitting lots of colleagues to the session, and we will start in about 5 minutes' time.
Hello.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning, Harry,
Good
and
morning.
everyone else.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Guys, you're obviously welcome to share contact details in the chat room and greet each other and so on. Please no aggressive marketing of unrelated content. We appreciate that. But you're welcome to share contact details and network in the chat room.
Morning, everybody from Mitchell's Plain.
Good morning. Welcome.
Unfortunately, I've got a couple of appointments that I can't get out of this morning. So I'll keep you guys on the side while participating in those other forums that I need to also contribute to.
Thank you so much. We appreciate.
If anybody's making coffee or tea, I'm willing to accept the offer as well, eh?
Hit the toe.
It's a good idea, though. Thank you, Juliet. We see that one.
Thank you, Juliet. Yeah. I firmly believe the world's problems can be solved over coffee.
Absolutely.
Morning, Harry. Morning, everybody.
Morning, Frank.
Sorry, I've got a bad background today. I have to share my offices with my kids.
It's a mutual problem.
Morning, Harry. Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Welcome. All right, I think it's time for us to get going. There are still lots of people joining, but they can join as we go along. Thank you, everybody, for joining and supporting the Transport Forum. It's great seeing everybody this early in 2022. I trust the year has been treating you quite well and that you're all back into the swing of things, as they say. And it's great seeing all the faces again. Thank you very much for your kind support. While people are joining, just a little bit housekeeping. Guys, please just keep yourself on mute as we go along. We would love to make it possible for everybody to chat during the panel discussions and so on. And so in other words, we make use of the unmute function only during panel discussions and so on. So we do not encourage questions and answers during the presentations. We do that during the questions and answers or panel discussions. So we can stay focused. And then please make use of the chat room, greet each other, share contact details if you want to. And also, if you want to ask a question in advance, so long for the panel discussion, you can post your question in the chat room. Otherwise, during the questions and answers, we'll give the opportunity to unmute and ask a question. A little bit more about that later on. Yeah, and as I said, stay on mute. I want to share my screen here that we can have a look at our program for the day. So today it is the 3rd of February 2022. We're talking about capacity building in the transport sector. I want to give special recognition to Charles Day. Charles is the person who actually supported me quite a lot and mentored me in putting together this program. So Charles, thank you very much for your kind support. We really appreciate it. And Charles also committed to facilitate our panel discussions. So Charles, thank you very much for that as well. All right, so the program, capacity building in the transport sector. Charles is going to do the opening address, and then our presenters will follow. Dr. Tulsa Naidu, Managing Director of Institute for Quality. I'm not going to read the entire program, it's take too long. Then we'll have John Harris, and then we'll have a panel discussion, and we will take a short break. And then thereafter, we will look at the important training and skill development to ensure right safety. That is Melani Naidu Pajiachi. Thereafter is Juliet Fourie and Dr. Shirley Lloyd, and a panel discussion again. So a very exciting program, and we've been looking forward to this for quite some time. Obviously, the Transport Forum, as you know, is for free, complimentary for everybody. And obviously, we need somebody to fund what we are doing, and we've got valued sponsors. And I would like to give some recognition to our alliances and sponsors. So let's quickly have a look at them. I'm going to run through them quickly, but effectively. And what we do during this session is I put the logo on the screen and I mention the name, and then I keep quiet for a few seconds. Should that organization want to say a few words about the organization, it will be appreciated. Otherwise, I will say a few words and then we'll advance to the next slide. So that's how we will do it. So the Transport Forum proudly have 5 industry bodies who's in alliance with the Transport Forum and supporting us and mentoring me a lot. And that the first one there you see is the South African Association for Freight Forwarders. And anybody from them want to say a few words? As you can see, they established in 1921, quite some time ago. It's a national association of members throughout the Republic of South Africa. Make a major contribution to facilitate trade within South Africa. Member companies manage over 80% of South Africa's international trade. So thank you very much, South African Association, for your support. We really appreciate it. Then we have the South African Express Parcel Association. Somebody from there. So it's all about express logistics. Comprises of member companies engaged in express freight and courier industry, representative of service providers throughout the express supply chain. Thank you very much for Gary Marshall and team supporting us. Great having them on board as well. South African Bus Operators Association, somebody from there. You can see they represent the South African bus and coach industry, formed in 1980 by 5 leading bus companies at the time. Today, Saboa represents about 70% of the public transport bus and coach fleet. So thank you, Basil Governor and team, for supporting us. We really appreciate that. ARIA, South African Rail Industry Association. Anybody from there? So it's a preeminent body in South Africa representing players in the rail industry. Vision is to have world-class rail infrastructure across South Africa, and surely we need that quite a lot. Our mission is to advocate for the rail industry and third-party access to the country's railway network. So that is ARIA. Then we have the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport South Africa. I see Catherine Larkin has joined. Catherine, you want to say a few words about SILSA?
Yes, thank you, Harry. Sorry about that. Yes, so just a few words. The Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport is a global body really for people in logistics, transport, and supply chain. Its focus really is on lifelong learning and supporting people in the industry throughout their career in terms of learning, development, networking, and really driving their career in the industry. Within the Institute, there are 2 interest groups, WILAT, which is Women in Logistics and Transport, which really focuses on supporting women. And then we also have the Next Generation, which is a dedicated interest group that looks at supporting youngsters and people joining the industry and really empowering them in their journey in the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for your kind support. Catherine also plays a big role in helping me, mentoring me, and a lot of things in this Transport Forum. Thank you, Catherine. I really appreciate that. Right, now we've got media alliances, Freight News, Railways Africa, and Engineering News. Let's go to Freight News. I don't know if Eugene wants to say a few words, perhaps, somebody from Freight News.
Good morning, everyone. And Harry, thank you very much for this opportunity. For those who don't know us, we used to be known as Freight and Trading Weekly. These days we are Freight News. Freight News is the online version of Freight and Trading Weekly. And of course, then we also have Freight Features, which takes a far more in-depth look at industry. We like to think of ourselves as comprehensive in our coverage of the freight industry, looking at all aspects of supply chain and logistics. We often take a critical look. Yes, and thank you very much again, Harry. And if I can also just use this opportunity to extend a welcome hand to anyone who would like to reach out to us and talk to us about whatever it is that they have on their minds about the industry, if there's anything that we can assist people with. And yeah, I hope you all have a really nice forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene. Really appreciate it. It's a nice forum because of your support as well. So really appreciate Freight News being part of the Transport Forum. It's actually been part of the Transport Forum since the inception, almost 15 years ago. So thank you very much for that. Right, Railways Africa magazine. I don't know if there's somebody from Railways Africa. The African Continent Specialist Trade Technical Business to Business online publication covering all aspects of the rail sector, published weekly online, and you can visit and subscribe there to their website, railwaysafrica.africa, and it's all about rail infrastructure. Thank you to Philippa, Dean, and her team. Rtma Media's Engineering News. Anybody from there to share a few words, perhaps? I'm preparing here. They also kindly gave us a video that we can share with you guys. I'm just setting it up quickly.
Hello and welcome to the roundup of this week's edition of the Engineering News and Mining Weekly magazine, published on Friday, 4 February 2022. In this week's cover article, Engineering News and Mining Weekly contributor Rebecca Campbell highlights South Africa's deployment of its first truly operational satellites. On January 13, 2022, a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket lifted off from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, carrying 105 small spacecraft ranging from CubeSats to orbital transfer vehicles. The 3 CubeSats were designed and built at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology, its biggest satellite project to date. The Engineering News features focus on boilers and burners, where a local manufacturer adds more mobile boilers to its portfolio. Business Conferences 2022, where an exhibitions company highlights the key industry exhibitions for this year. And Harbour and Offshore Services, where harbours need private sector investment. The Mining Weekly features focus on pumps, where leveraging industry-leading brands improves a company's technology offering. This week's business leader is Prabhashini Moodley, MD of Old Mutual Corporate. And as this week's cartoon shows, none of the non-Eskom stakeholders making oral representations to the energy regulator on Eskom's request for a 20.5% increase had any sympathy for such a hike. We hope you enjoy this week's edition of Rtma Media's Engineering News and Mining Weekly, the magazine that offers you news about developments in the real economy. Happy reading and see you next time.
Thank you, Engineering News. That was great. Let's continue with our sponsors recognition. Ladies and gents, we're also proud to announce CTRAC. They've been part of this Transport Forum since the inception, almost 15 years ago, but they also, from January, became a platinum sponsor of the Transport Forum. It's the first platinum sponsor in a while. And I don't know if there's somebody from CTRAC who want to say a few words about CTRAC. You can see the footprint is quite large, 6 continents, over 55 countries. Over 30 years experience, we have been keeping mobile assets of consumers, small and mid-sized businesses, and large enterprises always visible, and that's what it's all about, resulting in a vehicle security, safer driving, and more efficient fleet operations. So they committed to their vision of being an innovative global solution provider, simply connecting people with information to be always visible, and that's so important in the days we live nowadays. Thank you, C-Track. We've got a new kid in the block. This they just joined the Transport Forum as a gold sponsor, and I would love to give opportunity for Ben to tell a little more about this. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Harry.
Good morning.
Just a few quick words about us as a company. We have been around for 21 years, specializing in skills development in the supply chain and logistics industry environment. We are a fully accredited service provider. We offer a whole selection of learnership skills programs and short courses that meet the needs of industry. Primarily, we look to partner with our clients and build a strong relationship where we can help them, assist them, and get their skills development to a level where it creates productivity within their business. That is our main purpose as a business. That's what we want to achieve. And all of the products and everything that we offer is aimed at doing that, increasing productivity within our clients. So yeah, we have a whole host of things that we can offer you. Feel free to visit our website, bestco.co.za, and we're delighted to be part of this network. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Greta. We're delighted having you on board. Thank you so much for your gold sponsorship. We really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to seeing a lot of this go in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right, ladies and gents, we also have University of Johannesburg. They've been part of us also since inception, Prof. Jackie Walters, Prof. Naveen Pisa, and they're obviously very much involved in mentoring me. So there's somebody from them who want to say a few words from the Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management. The Bid Cargo, anybody from Bid Cargo? So they fulfill the needs of the express cargo industry for daytime and overnight cargo capacity across the comprehensive Southern and East Africa footprint. The leading cargo airline providing express air-to-airport solutions and related services to the courier and express logistics industry. Thank you very much, Bid Cargo. Zutari, somebody from Zutari. Letting me doing the work this morning. Zutari is consulting engineers, also for many years part of us, Transport Forum. And so if you need some advice and guidance and consulting in the transport sector, definitely Zutari is the people to talk to. Thank you, Zutari, previously been known as Oricon. Ability, somebody from Ability. So they're the human face of insurance, bus and coach insurance specialists, commercial insurance underwriters, and niche insurance products since 2011. They're acting on behalf of mutual and federal risk financing, gold sponsor of the Transport Forum. Thank you very much. Inway Risk Services, anybody from there? South Africa's largest independent brokers, offering personal, business, and specialized risk and insurance advisory services. Over 100 years combined experience. Services include commercial fleets, heavy commercial vehicles, and buses, marine and aviation insurance. Clearly specialists that know what they are doing. Thank you very much. Unitrans, somebody from Unitrans.
Morning, Harry.
Good morning.
Yes, Carly Fenter here. I just wanted to welcome everybody and say thank you to you for always hosting us. And we're very excited about this morning. And our very own Melanie will be representing us this morning. And we all believe in the importance of skills development and capacity building for our industry. So very excited about the session today. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Carly. We're excited about your involvement. Thank you for supporting us. We really appreciate that. Right, Global Trade Solution. Anybody from there? Founded in 1999, the GTS delivers innovative technology and consulting services to the international trade and supply chain community. Imports and exports, definitely need to talk to them. User-friendly, cloud-based international trade and supply chain solution that incorporates the core requirements to manage all activities around the international supply chain. Seamless integration with the various entities in the international supply chain, including the statutory agencies such as customs authorities. Thank you, Global Trade Solution. Standard Bank, somebody from Standard Bank. You can see here over 158 years of experience, believe that dreams matter and that together we can make them a reality. They're in more than 20 countries. Kathy Bell and them have been part of the transport also for many, many years. Thank you, Standard Bank, for your kind support and mentorship in many of these programs. Cuba. Somebody from Cuba? Lucifer, how about saying a few words about Cuba? Let me put you on the spot. Well, you can see it's part of the IC Mobility Group, enables public and private transport to move into a digital era. Journey planning, smart ticketing, streamlining electronic payments, shaping the digital transformation of the mobility sector. They know mobility. Clearly a leader in our industry in terms of revenue management and smart ticketing solutions. Thank you very much, Cuba, for your gold sponsorship. Easy Clear, somebody from Easy Clear. I said a leading software provider for the customs and clearing industry. The software solutions for customs clearing, freight forwarding, and logistics providers covering air, sea, road, and rail. Thank you very much. Easy Clear. Huawei. Gonna be somebody from Huawei. Very interesting solution from Huawei. You can obviously all our sponsors, you can get the links, to their websites on our website. Smarter transportation in a smarter world. So definitely not only selling cell phones, they've got smart transport solutions, and we invite you to go and have a look what they can offer. JC Auditors, somebody from JC Auditors.
Good morning, Harry. Thank you for the opportunity.
Morning, Ryan.
JC Auditors is basically an accreditation body. We offer ISO, and one of the biggest services that we offer is our SANS 1395, which is the Rtma certification. For those of you who don't know, RTMS is a South African national standard which promotes safety, compliance, and efficiency in commercial fleets. And it focuses on things like overload prevention, preventative maintenance, fatigue management, and it helps to minimize crashes, and it provides overall road safety. One of the projects that we are working on currently is sort of an RTMS STEP program, which targets SMEs, and it provides them with the basic technical skills and knowledge on how to educate drivers on wellness, fatigue, and to make roads safer overall. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ryan, for your support. We really appreciate it. Right, the Bunyu Group. I don't think Luis is online at the moment. They part of the Transport Forum's Black Empowerment Initiative as well. The Public Transport Knowledge Hub, bespoke taxi industry insights, integrated public transport network advisory, and public transport thought leadership. They understand public transport and the challenges, especially also in the taxi industry. And we really appreciate to receive their support. And you can talk to the Linear Capital Group if you need some advice in terms of public transport and taxis integration and so on. All right, so these are our sponsors again. We really appreciate all of them, and we're looking forward to you know, a bright future with them. So we also want to touch on the business directory of the Transport Forum. It's been outsourced to Olga Mashilu, Berlin Bondlet Consultant. You can see it's very much well categorized business directory, and it's quite popular. And the people that's listing the companies here, they are telling us that they put very much attention, and you can see also on the website the leads they're getting is very good. And listing in this business directory is only 450 rands per year. That's not really money. And you can contact Olga. You can take a picture of the screen. You can see Olga's number there. Contact her, and she will help you to get your company listed in this business directory. So the presentations you see here today, those that's going to be made available, we will upload them to this Transport Forum website for download. What we say is that you kind of need to be registered on our website before you can access the presentations, so that we can, you know, to communicate back to you and protect your information. We adhere strictly to our POPIA policy that you can find on our website as well. So to the left of your screen, should you go to the Transport Forum's website, and we're talking about that one. Should you go to the left of the screen, you'll see there's a user login where you can log in. Should you not have a login yet, then you can go to sign up. You select sign up, and you can go to a simple little you know, process to register yourself and to confirm your email address and so on. And then you can, after you sign up and log in, you can access the website. So then you can go to events, and you can select downloads, and then you'll get a little simple search engine. In this search engine, you can type in a person's surname or a topic like logistics or whatever. You hit search, and it will search through 15 years worth of presentations, a very powerful knowledge base, and it will bring up all the presentations related to your thing, your topic you put in there. Or you can go to category, and you can select today's date and hit search, and it will bring up all the presentations presented in today's session, and you can download them all complimentary, thanks to our great sponsors. So let's give a big hand to all our sponsors that's sponsoring us. We really appreciate their support in making the Transport Forum possible. So now I'd like to take you back to our program. It's time for us to get going. And our first presenter then for today, and we're talking capacity building in the transport sector, is Mr. Charles Day. He's an independent specialist, and he's going to talk about a strategic overview of the South African capacity building landscape. Thank you so much, Charles.
Thank you very much, Harry. And greetings to everybody, old friends as well as new faces. It's really great to be here. And I see that we have an excellent turnout today, 78 people. That's fantastic. So it's a great privilege to share my experiences and what I'm seeing from a sort of helicopter point of view. And I hope that the speakers that have been lined up, who've kindly volunteered their time and their knowledge to us, will add value to you in your capacity building in this industry. Obviously, if you have any further questions for me, Harry's got all my transport details, all my contact details. So I'm being load shedded at 10 o'clock, so I need to hurry up a little bit. Let me try and share my screen with you, and let's see how we go. There you go. Harry, is that visible?
Visible, thank you.
Okay, great. So let's have a look at then the transport industry. I just love this this acronym VUCAIN: vulnerable, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, interdependent, and nested. And that is the world of today, full of uncertainty, full of challenges, full of opportunities. One of the main challenges in the logistics industry is, of course, the fact that people are not accepting second best. They're demanding higher and higher service levels. And of course, they have options. They have many more options. I'm comparatively new in this industry, having only started in logistics and transport in 1976. And at that time, you only had one shipping line to use, and that was SAF Marine. And you only had one transporter to use, and that was the South African Railways and Harbours, unless you had very good reason to want to send your stuff by road. That just doesn't exist anymore. So we need to have, just hang on 1 second. My apologies. We need to have the ability to be flexible, and we need to be able to predict customer behavior. And that to me implies that we have to be able to analyze, process, and interpret data. Then, of course, we have customs and other trade legislation changing by the minute, and a strongly developing e-commerce industry. Now, all of these factors together tell you that the skills of today are probably not as applicable as the skills of tomorrow will be. I watched a brief clip yesterday, an interview with Elon Musk, in which he was saying that if you're not skilled, you're not going to have a job. And this argues that sometime in the future, we're going to have to be looking at a universal basic income grant throughout the world. But I think us, as people in industry today, can do a great deal for preparing our people for this changed world. So having looked at that, if I can just get my slide to change. So lots of opportunities, huh? The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is coming, and it looks to me from an outsider's perspective that it's actually coming a lot faster than originally anticipated. As the interest grows, so it seems that there is going to be increasing demand from industry and business for the legislators to try to remove any barriers to the implementation of this agreement. And that, of course, is going to create a lot of opportunities for us in South Africa and the rest of Africa. But I think the message is that you need to be gearing up now. You need to be developing your African markets now. You need to be spreading your products into Africa now and not waiting for the free trade agreement to come into effect. Because if you wait, you are probably going to be caught with your pants down because of the fact that a lot of people would have got there before you. I read a small article yesterday about how MTN shares in Nigeria are becoming very, very popular. After all the battles they had with the government in the last 5 years, they now seem to be getting to be the flavor of the year as far as Nigerian stock traders are concerned. There is, of course, a greater urbanization, greater demand for consumer goods, and the Internet of Things is becoming a huge factor in the development of transport systems, so that it's no longer a question of a Kuehne+Nagel competing with a DSV. It is the supply chains which are implicit in those providers which are going to be competing, And that, of course, leads to integration. I mean, if we look at the way in which Maersk and other MSC and other major carriers are becoming involved in the air freight, the freight forwarding, other sectors, we are seeing this integration taking place at a hugely accelerated rate. So if we now look at the South African situation, this slide was provided to me by the former head of SAQA, Joe Samuels. You will see that post-school, there are a number of departments, there are a number of bodies which impact on us in industry in having our skills initiatives recognized and or funded. What I think is most important for us guys is these two in pink at the bottom, the QCTOs and the CETAs. So QCTOs are really responsible for the registration and establishment of occupational qualifications. And those are really initiated officially by input from research done by the CETAs. So CETAs are responsible for, number one, as far as we are concerned, allocating money to training initiatives. But number two, doing a lot of research into what is actually needed by industry, trying to consolidate that into rational recommendations for the establishment of new qualifications and for funding those initiatives. So in that sense, the QCTO is there to facilitate the process. The CETA is there to initiate it from the point of view of research, and the QCTO then facilitates the establishment of qualifications. Unfortunately, this is a very complex process, and it's a process that doesn't really meet the fact that the demand for different skills is accelerating at such a high rate. So let me give you an example. If I decide today that I want to write and provide a BCom in transport IT, from today until the first learner sits down or the first student sits down to take part in that qualification, minimum 4 years in South Africa. In Rwanda, it'll take you 2 years. And even in Rwanda, it's probably too long because of the fact that that particular subject is changing so fast. Shirley Lloyd, who is going to be talking to us, has got some very, very interesting ideas about how what we need to do in order that skills development keeps pace with the actual demands of industry. All right. So, as industry, there are a number of questions which we need to be asking ourselves. Firstly, we need to be asking ourselves, how do we actually measure what we need? And these days, it's not a question of, do we need training? Do we need training in that skill within our company? That is not the question. The question is, what does Mr. Smith need? What does Mr. Dlamini need in order to do his job better and in order to do his job in a way that will meet our future requirements? We then need to look at whether we go down the formal qualification route. When many of us started in the industry, we went to university, we got a degree, and we fondly imagined that that would be the end of the story. Unfortunately, that is simply not the case any longer. The lifetime of a degree, in other words, the applicability of the skills and knowledge acquired during a degree has on average these days an 18-month life cycle. So that's a further consideration. And then the question of local or international qualifications, and John Harris will have a lot to say about that. Bear in mind, however, that South Africa as a country is fairly unique in that the official policy, the official policy is to discourage the direct participation of international bodies in our skills development initiatives. So, if you want to offer a qualification which is offered by the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, you need to get that localized. You need to have it aligned to the national qualifications framework. If you want to do pilot training in South Africa, whilst the standards are set by the international International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, you still need to align that training to the NQF. Furthermore, and Juliet is going to have a lot to say about this, do we fund it ourselves, or do we use CETA funding if we can obtain it? And is it an either or rather an either and question? So those are the strategic debates which Juliet will take you through, and she's a far more knowledgeable authority than I am. So the structure then of capacity building is divided amongst a number of both industry and professional bodies. And if I can just distinguish between those two, an industry body, excuse me. An industry body is a body which represents the interests of an industry per se, with government, with other industries, and so forth and so on. So, for instance, the South African Association of Freight Forwarders will go and fight on your behalf with customs as to what the new Customs Act should look like. Road Freight Association will go and fight with the Department of Transport on whether 40-foot containers may be transported in South Africa. I mean, overheight containers may be transported in South Africa without a permit, and so forth and so on. And the main bodies involved in transport, as far as industry representation are those on your left-hand column. Those on your right-hand column are professional bodies who are involved in the development of individuals. They are concerned about individuals reaching their full capacity as far as training is concerned. Number one, qualifications and designations, where a qualification is a recognition of achievement awarded by an education and training body, and a designation is a recognition of achievement in terms of both qualification, experience, and seniority offered by one of these bodies here: Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply, the Institute of Customs and Freight Forwarding, now just coming on stream, the South African, that is a compliance body, accounting and something. SAPIX we know, and a new professional body coming up in Africa is the Supply Chain Council of Africa. It's not SCMCSA, it's SCMCA, apologies. Another one coming up. But those bodies essentially provide an umbrella under which capacity building take place. They also liaise very strongly with the CETAs and the QCTO in order to provide input there. Okay, so we have a number of windows which are available for funding from CETAs. All of these require a great deal of compliance. You need to know your way around these windows. And as Tulsia Naidu is going to tell you, you need to have a lot of experience in dealing with CETAs in order to access this money successfully. And I think as well that Melanie Naidu will be able to give us specific case studies of how they strategically plan and execute their training for road safety in terms of what is available in these areas. And then, of course, SARS has some allowances which are grantable in terms of learnerships and the YES program, the Youth Employment Scheme program. So, although it's not easy to access these funds, it requires clever people who are familiar with the legislation, can be done. And then, of course, there are a lot of BEE opportunities. It's said that the easiest pillar to achieve BEE points is education and training, because of the fact that all you have to do is spend money before the taxman gets it in order to fund your training. So that exists. And that is me, people. And I'm looking forward then to hearing the other speakers elaborate on what I've outlined for you. And I'm looking forward to participating in the panel discussions. Thank you, and back to you, Harry.
Thank you so much, Charles. Clearly, we're learning a lot from you, and your experience is contributing a lot to the session. Thank you so much for opening the session for us. Ladies and gents, our next presenter is Dr. Tulsia Naidu. She's the Managing Director of Institute for Quality. She's going to talk about navigating the minefields of bureaucracy for capacity building success. Thank you very much, Tulsia. Looking good. Thank you, Tulsia.
Thank you very much. I think the phrase for the century is "you're on mute." Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you again for the opportunity. I am hoping that I could share some information of value to you, and I'm more than happy, whilst we have the 20 minutes, I'm more than happy to share information with you if you would need to go a little deeper in any of the areas here. Full disclosure, I'm in the middle of load shedding whilst we have the support for the ESCOM, the word escapes me. I do not have air conditioning, so I have my broad door opened and there might be some outside noise, so please forgive me. Situation of our times. Ladies and gentlemen, please forgive me. I am just trying to move forward on my slides, which...
Try the down arrow.
Yes, I did use it. So if you don't mind, I will just take this view if you don't mind, if it's okay to share. I'm not sure why the lock is on. Thank you very much. I leave you a minute to browse there because it's a disclosure as well that I am a training provider. And sometimes I do feel like the banana on the screen. And today the perspective that I share is of a training provider and my experiences as a training provider navigating through the skills world in South Africa. The training providers, in my opinion, do not get their full share of respect and indulgence. And I will take you through why I believe that. So the idea today is that I do take the form of the banana. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Charles started a bit in talking about the whole age of disruption. And everyone sitting here on this particular conference today will be feeling that restlessness on what this technology, what's this disruption about in our world around us. And many actually feel pretty helpless in terms of where do I start? How do I embrace the challenges that are happening within my particular industry? And where do I get these trends of what's happening? And the idea here is that, and the purpose of my presentation is that recognize that it's the restlessness and identify a path that we can create as business on how to start maneuvering and pivoting attention from our core business in what we do in our daily work and being able to pivot slowly, parallel and not in place of, parallel to looking and understanding this whole new paradigm of what is there and what can be. So the uneasiness is there and it's very loud and getting much louder. So the idea is that 85% of South African companies are vulnerable or feel vulnerable. And it is my belief if you're not feeling vulnerable, then you're probably the ostrich because all of this is happening all around us. And it permeates across organizations. So this technology and this disruption, yes, it will be there, but how does it get into the world of skills development? You'd find that the employers would need different skills, more skill sets. As employees, that skill set, and Charles mentioned this in the introduction, when we thought we got away with university and with the degree and we thought, hey, yay, here we sit. That happened in the baby boom generation. You know, you could get your skill set and it'll last you a lifetime. But currently, as we talk today, the employee skill sets are so transitory in the sense that what we have as skill sets today won't necessarily be the skill set needed in the next couple of months. Depends on the pace in which your company is handling the disruptions or a year or two. So the skill set that employees have definitely has a limited shelf life. And that realization is fundamental at an individual level, as well as at an organizational level, because it impacts at so many levels. And we'll talk through some of it during the course of the presentation today. So what do we do as business? The idea was to start looking at what skills our current staff had, and many, if my knowledge serves me right, in the training industry for 22 years, is that employees do have particular skill sets, and the mobility around those skill sets are limited. And again, it's my opinion that we're not doing enough now to start looking at the flexibility and the transitioning to the new skill sets that one needs. So people won't necessarily lose their job, but their skill sets within their particular occupation will need to change in line with the disruption that seeks to kind of permeate every organization. So what will the impact of the skill set? If you looked at, and you know, we're in the fourth industrial revolution. The past revolutions, from the industrial to all the others, there was time. There was time available for institutions within those different generations to lobby together, to say, hey, let's get together, let's write qualifications, let's work with this. And they had about a decade or two, really, to kind of embrace the changes that were about to come. Newsflash is that we don't have that luxury of time now in this fourth industrial revolution, because the pace of this change is so radical and is so fast that one needs to. And the quote that Charles brought up in his introduction, the one by Elon Musk, it is a discussion that most world leaders are embracing currently, because we are going to leave, and South Africa is going to be victim of this in such a great way, because a lot of our low-end positions that will become redundant, and they would need to change skill sets. So if we're in L&D teams, if we're sitting in the C-suite and boardrooms, these are discussions that needs to be had, because those skill sets need to change. And if not, this is why all the big strategic country decision makers are talking about the grant to be made available to the victims of this whole skill set. So the idea is, if not already happened, that in the next year or two, a lot of the skill sets the employees will need, we might not truly even understand right now, but we already have an inkling as to what it is. And I don't believe that we should wait and see. There's on the table currently lots of information on what we can already start embracing, what mindsets we can already have within organizations to give us an easier transition. So this is a study by Accenture in terms of looking at the disruption generally, in broader terms internationally, and its impact within South Africa itself. Just a quick, I'm not going to go through in absolute detail, but 75% of industry, and this study was on C-suite executives. So, you know, decision makers, strategic players within the business, and it is of the top 3,000 of the world's largest companies. 75% expect that their industry to be disrupted by new innovations in the next 3 years, especially from competitors and technologies. 50% of them concede that their companies are not prepared for the disruption, and 16% are satisfied that the innovation that they're introducing, they currently meet these changes that are about to come. So this calls for a culture change within organizations. It calls for us as companies to start embracing creativity, if not promoting it, looking within the organization for people to come out with innovative ideas on how their role functions, give them, and you will see data coming up later, give them the liberty to look at what's happening in their particular skill set and how their skill set is transitioning over the next few years. The ideation needs to happen regularly. We need to create very vibrant, nimble teams within an organization who starts embracing discussions such as this. The idea that productivity looms over our head on a daily basis and we can't spare the time. Well, if you don't, you're going to be left behind because somebody is doing that discussion. And it calls for new thinking. This is such an important point. It calls for thinking. And I say this with absolute respect, we've stopped becoming thinking individuals within the skills paradigm in itself. We tend to start rolling with and becoming mechanistic about how we roll our skills development. And in this new time, in this age of technology, thinking is king. All right, so 90% of companies, when spoken to, focus on these 7 priorities. And I want to go through them very quickly. The first one is data-driven, okay? Data is new air. And in agile companies and companies that are embracing the disruption, data is air. So like I said, if you want the creativity and the ideation, etc., you would need to be data-driven to find all of these. The idea is that we be hyper-relevant. And I'm so glad the Transport Forum is hosting this particular discourse or discussion, because that's talking about being hyper-relevant, to keep relevance, to push your head into discussions all around you where you know these kind of discussions in the future are happening. We need to be talent-rich. Being talent-rich, we need to be smart at being talent-rich. So what sort of talent do we actually need? And the idea is to find out what are those particular skills and how do we harness and bring this talent in. Remember also, and I'll touch on it just now, that we're also working within a regulated and restrictive environment in our particular businesses. We need to be asset smart, especially in the technology space. I make this little anecdotal kind of thing about teachers and computers and, smart boards in schools. We need to start looking at our particular industries and ask what tech is there and make those assets available. We need to have an inclusive culture, participatory approach to these sort of discussions, not just happening in the C-suite among the honchos of the business, but have that discussion permeate across the industry itself. We need to be network powered. So here's transport, this particular forum, that's exactly what it's going to be about. The network, why invent the wheel every time when you can network and create and seize the opportunities as a group? And the idea that these all need to be technology propelled. All right, so having said that, how advanced are we as South Africa in terms of our international competitors and understanding this? The Accenture model shows that our maturity index in South Africa is 54 out of 100, as opposed to 78 out of 100 in more of the competitive environments or innovation, as they call them, the global innovation champions. So we have a long way to go. We're kind of touching the surface. And so there are very few companies that are bringing up this index, that actually are taking they're making their mark in terms of starting to create the disruption in that particular. So whilst it's a very small group that are actually creating and pivoting towards the new normal, the waves that they create is creating the disruption that we all feel within the industry at large. So it's not necessarily meaning that the whole industry is starting to change and doing this. It could be a small innovative group creating a lot of waves in the industry. So it's good also to know who these people are in your particular sectors that are creating the waves and what waves are they creating. So how do we as business do this? We have to be committed to a particular mandate in our business and be able to work on the production that drives our business, whether it's service or core production. So how do we then make that pivot to this new way of thinking, to meet the disruption, to feed the disruption. And the idea is to look at what are the skills and identify what it is. And I'm saying this again, the idea is that we've got to recognize it. If you're waiting for the quality councils to tell you what they are, we're going to lose and fail hopelessly. Because, and I'll share with you why I don't think that drive is going to come from the people who are supposed to be leading us in South Africa. So business needs to take charge of doing that. And I believe it's this space like this and conversations like this that actually bring those and brings and helps fuel that, discussion on what are the skill sets that we need. In South Africa, we kind of have a double whammy when it comes to doing this. But before I get there, I think I'm kind of very passionate about this whole, the skill set around this disruption and all of that. And the temptation to labor that is quite great. But I do need to move the discussion more towards our current scenarios and look at how does our skill support systems in the country help business in this transition. So the point that I want to end this discussion point with is that nobody's going to help you. As business, find out yourself. So that's what it is. And the idea is to connect with people who I think might know or cumulatively get the cumulative strength. So there are skill sets out there. There are sets like the, like this one here from the World Economic Forum. Davos in the last 2 years have been speaking about what sort of skills do companies need now. I read this incredible book. It might be dated for some of you, but it was Thank You for Being Late by Thomas Friedman. And in that book, it was so incredible because it made me understand what is creating this astronomical pace in which change is happening. And this book kind of made me understand that it is about, it is about the chip. It is about, the computer chip and the size of in your cell phone itself can do all the functions that, your big laptop can possibly do. But that's with the IoT is starting to create that impetus. So understanding that is really important. These sort of future skills are equally important. And as I said, thinking and data, etc., is what's supposed to be driving companies. In South Africa, we have a double setback. And I mean, what do I mean when I say that? Business have to kind of catch up in getting these skill sets in their organizations. And I don't mean, and we're not going to survive. We just take a small niche of people in our company and give them all these future skills. It's not going to help. It's your mass, en masse, that needs to have all of these skills that we talk about. And that will kind of bring us to the table, at least to be competing at an international level. In South Africa, we suffer the harshness of an ineffective education system. So our new entrants, our staff that come to us, as wonderful as they are as people, the basic skills, the foundational skills are lacking. And I've spoken to employers over the last 2 decades, and we're looking at ways in which to embrace that and enhance that. And as business, we need to find that solution. It's not going to come anytime soon from the education system itself. I'm not seeing it coming from our quality assurance organizations either. So business again needs to come together and says, okay, how do we address that? Because if you want to embrace future skills, and if you want to layer it on a shaky foundational skills, there's no hope for that system to work. So we've got it, and that's why I say we have a double whammy. We have to build foundational skills like your literacy, and bring literacy levels to a particular level. And our international competitors don't have that problem. So that's why It's just a lot more difficult for us as a country. We need to play catch up. So how do we do that? How do we make up for the skills deficit? That honestly, my opinion is it's not going to come right anytime soon. My analysis of the education system doesn't show any remarkable difference for the next couple groups of graduates. You can't have a compromised curriculum to pass the year. So that person that was part of that system is going to come up with some sort of problem and some deficiencies. So the idea is the world of business needs to understand it, that it's just not about taking the resources available, implementing the learnership that's provided by the CETA, and that's my skills development. The idea is for us to be smart in the way we embrace skills development in our organization. So how do our friends in the global north deal with all of this? So you would find that a lot of our competitors, their countries, and many of them are first world, saw this coming, saw the technological pace in which things and change is happening. And what did they do? They integrated skills like the future skills into their curriculum development process. What did we do in South Africa? We took out fundamentals from our qualifications and we didn't substitute them with future skills. I've sat in boardrooms across a few regulatory bodies, and this discussion on future skills started 10 years ago, and it's still exactly that, a discussion every now and again on a boardroom table. There's been no movement in terms of doing that. So again, I say that expectation on those skills must come from business, in collaboration with your providers, obviously, but don't expect it to come from a regulator. So the idea is that you recognize the need and you try and get it woven into the fabric of your business. So I want to punctuate what I say, to say that whatever I discuss, and when we talk about the CETAs, the landscape and all of that, I am saying it with absolute respect for where we are as a country, with an intent to highlight a weakness and say that as business, when I talk business, I include ourselves as training providers because we are a business. We need to collaborate, we need to talk, identify shortcomings, and come up with processes to help mitigate that. And whilst at the same time looking at how our friends up north help heal these and develop these problems. So a lot of the comments that I make comes with me being literally in the trenches for the last 22 years, of living through systems, of embracing these systems. And I don't think you want to hear today my view of telling you where the money pots are available, how you actually go there. I can direct you to videos on where that is. But I thought you might want some insight into how do we think about all of this and how do we help move from where we are at and how do we create better. So that then takes me to looking at our system as a skills development within the country itself. So you're aware that we had the qualifications development, etc. We had the CETA world, and I'll call it the CETA world for want of or lack of getting into the complexity around it. And then what happened 20 years ago, there was a research commissioned by the department into what's happening and how we're faring. And that was not a very nice report. It did highlight difficulties within the CETA environment. And what do we do as a country? Instead of getting together and find out how can we heal and pull the system from inside and create strategies on improving of that, what do we do as a country? We throw out the entire baby with the bathwater. And then we wait 10 years again to help build a new system. and put a new system in place, which in my opinion, again, because I'm in the trenches, there is no improvement. There's no one better than the other. And what is the price for us as a country? What is the price as taxpayers? Billions and billions of rands that went into changing the system and maintaining the system. I know the system really well. I know people within the system really well. And I love the people within the system. And I believe they have the best of intentions within the system. But the system became that. The system took over. And I think that's where the problem lay. Maybe it's a price for democracy that it needs to have all-inclusive conversations. And in the time that it takes to have these inclusive conversations, 5 years have passed. I think Charles mentioned it takes 4 years to write a qualification in the country. Sadly, it also takes about 2 years for a provider to try and get accreditation, 6 months to get the telephones answered. So I'm sorry, it's not mentioned, it's not intended to be disrespectful, but it's telling you this is the reality of what it is. So one of the things that Charles asked me to mention in part of my discussion was just highlight what the CETA world is and where's these pots of money that are available. And I also want to tell you about the pots of money too. It's not what it's supposed to be. And we need as business to ask, why isn't those pots of money supposed to be there and why is it not there? So if we look at the CETA world itself, we have 3 distinct features or functions within the CETA. The grants division that looks at your mandatory and discretionary grants. And that's how do you access these different pots of money. Then you got your learnership division, which looks at the qualifications that you need and feeds you as business, listens to you in terms of what your needs are, and then feeds you with what the qualifications are, bring you around the table and say, right, okay, tell us what you need, and develops a qualification. And then there's the quality assurance part that says, okay, if you want to run these qualifications, now you got to play this game and you've got to make sure your certain quality exists. And I'm all for the quality, please don't get me wrong. I do support the quality initiatives around it. On the mandatory grant itself, you know, we are now down to 20% of the mandatory grant. So skills development was supposed to have been exactly that, for you to get back your 50% and be able to train your employees within your organizations. And you desperately need that because you need to now future skill your business. So now you've found that, yes, you're paying your skills development, but you're tapping back into your pocket because now this 50% is now 20%. If I am aware that they won the case on the 50%, not sure yet what's happening in that front. But that's the CETA in the world of the CETAs. I don't want to labor this. I have, over the last 2 years or so, done a lot of videos that explains all of this in absolute detail. And you'll find that on my company YouTube page, where I go into absolute detail. So if you're a novice in the system and didn't quite get what all of this and want more information, you're more than welcome to go there. I'm not, it's not a business promotion. I'm sharing information in terms of where you can get knowledge more than what I'm providing here. So this is a quick look at that money that we're talking about and how it spins in the system. This is a picture of a video as well. So it explains exactly the skill cycle, that money as it leaves your pocket, where it goes to and in whose pocket it gets to until it finally comes back 20% to your pocket. And the idea is that you need to, and I think if I heard Charles correctly, Juliet will mention how you access those different grants. And the idea is to be pretty smart about it in accessing all of this. It is a tragedy that a lot of the small companies still do not take their portion of the pie because for the complexity of the whole situation and as complex as it is. And the tragedy with that, again, is that that means they're not doing the skills development. And if they're not doing the skills development, they're not becoming future safe in terms of their skill sets. And therein lies the problem as an industry. Okay, so that talks about the the CETA environment. So one of the things, ladies and gentlemen, is I do, as a provider, being in this as my trade, I do think deeply around it, around skills development. I look at what, as a country, how do we make this better? How do we collaborate? How do we get together and have conversations so that we can make this country better? I am also having a heightened awareness of the political urgency around it and all the other matters that we so don't want to be reminded about.
Also,
It is my belief.
Just no time. Thank you.
Thank you. It is my belief that we're an over-regulated industry. The skills development industry is over-regulated. And I will go through very quickly. We're very bloated as an industry. And just as a matter of interest, one CETA alone is over R1 billion income. And a lot of that money should be going back into the system itself. If one looks at why and what is the purpose of regulation, the idea of regulation was to enhance, either improve price, stop price regulation, improve quality, improve standards. And I buy that, the issue on improve quality, but at what cost? So in any country, one has to look at cost benefit, do that analysis between cost and benefit on regulation. And in South Africa, it'll be an incredibly interesting exercise. If you look at the number of providers, look at the amount of billions that goes into that regulation process. There must be a better way that we can do this as a country. Sorry, I just have to skip a lot of that because I think in terms of time, we did go a little over. One of the problems we have as providers is that the quality regime within the country is through the quality councils. And every quality council operates in isolation. It has a silo mentality around it. So if as a provider, I am now accrediting a level 4, and that's within the QCTO space, and then I want to do a level 5 or a level 6, which falls within the HEQC space, I duplicate everything. So there's absolutely a total lack of parity of esteem within the system itself, lack of trust within the system. So we need to find a way around that because everything is cost. And we need to look at doing that. So what is it then? What can I leave you with as business? What is it that you need to do? Okay, I think I skipped that and got carried away with talking. The first thing I think we need to do is to make L&D strategic in your organization. L&D needs to be in your C-suite because skills development, future skills, and all of these discussions needs to emanate in your boardroom. It's not for the SDF and your organizations to talk to the CETA and says, okay, I managed to get a R1 million from this particular CETA. What can we do? What learnerships are available? That thinking is not going to get you future-proof. That thinking will give you your BBBE points. So the idea is to maybe start being a little more strategic on the L&D initiatives. I'm not punting this as a training provider. I'm punting this as a business strategy. So that's the idea. And the idea is to start using big data in your organizations, to start looking at big data skills as one of your first future skills. And every nuance within your organizations needs to extract big data, analyze it, and put it right up front. And that will enhance your service delivery, looking at how to treat your customers and working with your customers. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to conclude by saying training is incredibly expensive. As an industry, we need to start lobbying within the CETA environments, especially employer organizations. Do you know that skills development grants within CETAs has not changed in the last 20 years? For me, it's ironic that the budget for regulation is so high, but the budget for improving quality training itself is so low. And not developed in 20 years. The expectation is that employers must top up and every year as it goes. But the idea is that we need to start getting to the boardroom table and say, look, where's this money going and how can we improve the quality of training so that we can pay experts to deliver training and have the funding available to do that. So ladies and gentlemen, the training providers have amazing resilience. We constantly fight for our space despite earning the right repeatedly. Unfortunately, I think it has a negative connotations. In the past 20 years, it was a political drive to create that perception in many ways. So the skills landscape need not be a self-help situation. Training providers are incredibly informed about their industry, about the transition, the future skills. They know this because it's their core business. Then and I think they can be quite an interesting partner to you in terms of being able to drive and assist and guide in terms of skills development. We fight the same realities in South Africa. So let's together build our businesses and building South Africa while we're doing exactly that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dulcia, and especially also for highlighting the important role businesses should play in this. It's so important, instrumental, and the pace of change, as you said, especially with the fourth industrial revolution, is frightening. And these new skill sets need to come in place, and people like yourselves helping us to get there. So thank you very much for this presentation, and I'm quite sure that people are looking forward to engage with you in the questions and answer session. Thank you so much. Right, ladies and gents, our next presenter then is Mr. John Harris. He's the International Education and Business Development Lead, Chartered Institute for Logistics and Transport. And he's going to talk about the importance of skills development and the current women's project. Thank you very much, John.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Harry, for having me today. Lovely to see you all. Harry, can I just do a time check? I know you wanted to allow some questions and have a short break. When do you need me to finish by?
I'll give you your 20 minutes.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you. I will just share the slides for my side then. And again, hopefully you will see there's a bit of a pattern here. My presentation definitely complements the previous two because it's bringing on board some of those challenges associated with international course provision, but also looking at some of the local stuff that's actually going on at the moment that's really trying to bring a new look to the issue of skilling and almost filling in where the gaps are, rather than rely too much on standard qualifications. So I will just test, hopefully this is going to be fine. Harry, can you just confirm it's a full screen and that everything's good?
It's good, and you can continue, thank you.
Great. So Catherine gave us a little bit of an introduction about who CILT South Africa is. We are a federated organisation, so CILT International, who I work for, leading on the education and professional development side, is a global body. And we have over 40 branches and country organisations around the world. So we really are all over the place. The women's group, the Women in Logistics and Transport, and the Next Generation Youth panels exist across the world, but the local manifestation of that and the way that that's demonstrated is actually governed very heavily by local culture and what the priorities are within industry and the priorities of learning within that particular country. Now, we cover quite a broad spectrum. And the idea is that when someone becomes a member of our professional body, that hopefully they actually stay because they can take their skill base and move it into different areas. So, for example, I have friends of mine in their 20s and 30s that started off within local governments or municipalities, then moved into consultancy, and now have a really good thematic job, say within rail or within the promotion of walking and cycling. There's a lot of cross movement in terms of career development, but these are the 8 main pillars, that, if you like, the technical areas, the topic areas that we cover. Now, one of our challenges across the world globally is around standards and who respects the standards. So we have a situation where our main qualifications were developed in the UK. Our biggest chartered institute branch is the UK, with about 20,000 professional members. And they are regulated by Ofqual. And some of the standards and processes that our national qualifications body in the UK have set out are now becoming tighter and tighter, to the stage where actually anyone wanting to study a UK qualification from overseas really has to go to a provider that will allow the central institute in the UK to do all the assessment and all of the moderation, marking, everything, to make sure that the standard is kept absolutely watertight. However, around the rest of the world, we've almost got three categories. We've got countries where the ministries are not that worried about the value of CILT in terms of it being registered on a framework. They'll just say, look, this is a good qualification. There are those where there's a bit of a hybrid situation, and there's those where actually they will only look to the UK standard. And at the moment, we're doing some creative work, looking at the QCTO qualifications and looking at our own and how we actually can mesh them together so people can still obtain a qualification that is centrally recognized and that the seaters say, yeah, we see the value, but also it's got that international credential as well. So you'll see on this map that the gold pins are where we have a CILT branch. So we have members of the institute, but the purple flags are where we have providers operating on their own, and where we are actually having to manage that direct relationship. And this is good because it actually allows the expansion. You can see that South America has been the latest kind of conquest. And that happened actually during COVID. So we haven't seen a slowdown in the development, and the online conversion of a lot of materials and tools has really helped with that. Now, I mentioned the importance of standards. So we have some global standards. This is our key knowledge area document, and they focus on the knowledge needed to be a chartered member, okay, of the institute. And really, this is the barometer that we work from. If we want to unpack our qualifications a little bit more, you can see that there's a range starting from a school leaver, that's the entry, through to an advanced diploma, which for our purposes allows you to become chartered. So we treat it the same as a degree. It's not the same number of, guided learning hours. It's not exactly the same number of credits, but in terms of the assessment and the professional projects, it's very similar. And what we've been trying to do is work with a number of organizations and countries, including CILT South Africa, to try and make sure that everyone understands what these international qualifications do and how they fit in. Now, increasingly, we've found that people want to study this in a modular way. They want to bank some credits and then come back to it later in life. And that's absolutely fine too. I think from the get-go, I need to say that CILT is passionate about building balanced professionals, and that's around skill sets, not qualifications. So our success factors are not about how many people studied our qualifications. Okay, that's a nice thing to know, but a key success factor is about how we grow balanced professionals, and that's about having breadth, and that covers things like your digital understanding, your understanding of sustainability, your appreciation of the environment, your leadership. And then the depth may be a particular aspect of supply chain or transport. So it could be passenger transport management, it could be working on the railways, it could be a role within supply chain. And then sitting with that, we have a continuing professional development scheme that every member of CILT that is qualified has to then keep updated. Now, we're seeing a big step change, and this is taken from our international survey. We carried out 2 market research pieces, one in November and one in January this year, and it's given us a lot of data. And what's interesting is that we're seeing a big shift to bite-sized learning rather than committing to do whole qualifications. We're seeing a shift to flexibility. So if someone can gain the learning and the competence through CPD or a bite-sized course rather than a full course, they would rather do it that way. And a big shift to CPD. Normally, our student registrations are around about the 10 to 20% mark of CPD versus other qualifications. But interestingly, out of all of our portfolio of international products, it's shot up to 40% now in terms of CPD demand. So we're seeing quite a marked change globally in this. Now, if we then move on to the next point, which is really critical, is we're also in the business of using training in this kind of what I call polyfiller way. It's there to fill in the gaps. It's there to help you be that rounded professional. So if I've done a BCom and I've been working in finance for 5 years, and then I moved to a logistics company and I've been there for 2, but at a middle management, emerging leader position, and I'm actually learning an awful lot about logistics on the job. Actually, in order for me to make sensible business decisions and to become an experienced practitioner or professional within supply chain, I don't need to necessarily do a supply chain qualification at level 5 or 6. What I need to do is to be able to fill in my knowledge gaps, perhaps at level 2 or 3, just so I know enough for it to make sense, and then I apply it at the level at which I operate. So using a competency framework, particularly with industry, starts to make everything much more industry facing than saying that the qualification is a good thing to do in its own right. This model is the UK model. If anyone is interested, please do get in touch with me afterwards, but you can freely look at this documentation on the ciltuk.org.uk website. And we're beginning to try and embrace this kind of approach in our conversations with industry and making sure that products and services are actually fit for purpose. I do agree with some of the previous speakers about the urgency issue. And because of the speed issue, there is a real need to be able to create courses, get out there and start doing them. And some of the CPD programs I'm involved with, birth to delivery is less than 6 months. But as soon as you start trying to manipulate a qualification that actually you can't refresh any less than 5 years is a real challenge. However, if people follow that framework, what we hope is that they will climb these ladders of progression, going up into our chartered levels. And that requires leadership, it requires evidence of management, not just the academic or qualification-based evidence. So where do we bring this all together in South Africa? Well, we've been fortunate enough to be a part of the Commercial Training Transport Academy's Women Inspiring Women project. We were involved at quite an early stage, which was great. We were able to get involved with shaping the bid. I myself have worked on a number of USAID bid projects and delivered them successfully in other parts of the world for CILT. And we put together a partnership. So CTA is the lead, CILT is providing the mentoring scheme and some of the shape around development of the mentors and the women, and Commerce Edge is the training provider. And the slight difference with this model is that there's a qualification, a diploma, with the ability to then bridge on to doing other things later on, but also some mentoring that's designed to bridge them. It's designed to support the women learners in their diploma, but then also help them in their workplace application and then in wider workplace opportunities and challenges after they have graduated. So it's actually trying to move from that study mentality through to more of an application approach, and trying to dovetail these two together. It's the first time we've done it in this particular way. It's a 3-year program, so we're just ending sort of year 1 going into year 2. but we've learned some really important lessons, and let me explain what they are. So first and foremost, what was really exciting about this is it was a training provider-led bid. We didn't come in as a professional body and say, we must do this. The energy was already there from a training provider that was passionate about women, passionate about giving them opportunities. And we totally back the three strands: the drivers, the entrepreneurs, and the professionalization. At the moment, our focus has been on the professionalization strand, which is designated to support about 125 women. Now, 100 are going through the diploma route way at the moment. And the plan is when they finish, they will be able to carry on into professional membership and be assessed for whichever grade is appropriate. They will be able to contribute and actively get involved in the women's group and, of course, the next generation group. The mentoring and coaching program will also be able to be expanded. And we are asking our 40 volunteers, so these are mentors from industry that have pledged to give their time. We're going to ask them if they will carry on, and they will actually give the opportunity for a longer term mentoring relationship to be put in place. So if you want to find out more about that, do hop on the link. Now, what does that mean in terms of the mentoring? Now, we've learned some really critical lessons here. We actually have a universal mentoring program. So we do have a mentoring kit that any CILT organization can get hold of and customize for their local culture. In Kazakhstan, we ran a model in Central Asia looking at business support. That's what BSP stands for. And that used a blend of training. So we trained the mentors to say, you don't just tell people what to do. You are not a consultant. There might be times where they want your skill and people say, I don't know what I don't know. But actually, you as a mentor need to really think about your behaviors. And we said, you need to think about how you want to support a person or the organization that they work for. Is it direct advice? Is it a pure business coaching approach? Is it more focused training and facilitation in a group format? Or is it technical and business mentoring for the individual? What style do you have to adopt? And we kind of use that approach also in challenging the mentors now that really had to put their individual women first, and they had to shape it around the skill gaps and the needs of the individual person. The lessons that we're learning is there are different ways of being mentored. Yes, there will be times when people don't always get a match. Normally, this should be driven by the mentee, but sometimes there's a culture where the mentee expects the mentor, to chase them up. And also the who it is very critical. In some countries, we find that people can be assigned a mentor and it will work extremely well, even if they've never met them before. They get put together and they kind of hit it off. In some other cultures, it takes quite a bit of time because of the who it is to feel comfortable. So in that instance, we've learned some real lessons through this first pilot. The one thing I will say is that we mustn't, as a community, undervalue or not utilize the real power of mentoring. I've been an advocate of this within the UK CILT for a long, long time. And actually, the day I don't stop mentoring people will probably be the day I need to sort of move away and retire. Mentoring is an absolutely critical way of trying to really get to know that individual, and also to tease out some of those skills gaps that actually we heard about structures earlier, that the structure and the system might not be able to tease out. A, because people don't feel comfortable talking about it, but almost that mentor is seen as a trusted friend and a professional companion that's able to actually tease out some of those things. Now, of course, the mentee has to take the action. They have to really be inspired to then go back to their sponsor or their employer to say, hey, I think I know what the sweet spot is. I think I know what I need now to transition from being useful to you in this way to being useful and practical in this way. But please, 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 if there's anything I want to take away is that trying to blend and use mentoring programs as an integral part of this wider education debate let's not underestimate the power and the impact. We've seen that already in Kazakhstan. We hope we will see this obviously through the program here in South Africa. So finally, these would be my 5 key things to take away. Absolutely, professional bodies, we need to be focused totally on the skill issue rather than qualifications. We've got to respect that just because something is endorsed or has a badge on it doesn't necessarily mean everyone wants to rush out and use it. We're going to have to be much more tailored, much more bespoke, and we're going to have to allow things to be disaggregated into bite-sized learning if we haven't already done it. The learning opportunity, i.e. the course, the program, the gap filler, whatever it is, even if it's a one-day course, has to be turned around and specified and delivered on a much faster turnaround. And finally, this goes back to the mentoring. We need to be very individual-centric in how we go in with this, as well as organization-centric in meeting needs. Here's some useful portals for you to go and have a look at. There are some further skills, seminars and one-to-one interviews on our YouTube channel. That's the one that says International Media. They're all free. Please do go and have a look if you are interested and passionate in this particular area. So that's me. I think that was dead on 20 minutes, Harry. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much, Jan. So important competency and knowledge. And you've actually educated a lot during this presentation. I'm not going to waste time. We want to go into the panel discussion, questions and answers. I'm quite sure there are people who have questions for you guys. So can we ask that Charles Day and Torsha Naidu and John Harris please switch your cameras on so that we can do the spotlight thing. Obviously, should the other panelists of this afternoon want to join in, you're welcome also to switch on your cameras. So let's quickly have all of them on. Thank you. Charles, thank you for facilitating. All right, ladies and gents, you're welcome to ask questions, and you can put up your hand. You can, for example, go to the bottom of your screens. You'll see there's reactions. You can put up your hand. If you want to ask a question, I will recognize you and you can ask a question. Obviously, unmute yourself and ask your question. So opportunity there is now, and then you can in the chat room you can post questions there, but preferably put up your hand and we can recognize you. And thank you, Charles, for facilitating. Seems people are absolutely impressed with your presentations. They've got no questions.
I think we managed to confuse everybody.
Harry, perhaps I can kick it off because I've got a question for Charles and Theresa while everyone's thinking. We heard very much, Charles, in your presentation. It was really helpful about sort of setting the scene and the framework and the role of the seaters. And then we heard, you know, the view about some of the frustrations, probably the wrong word, but some of the challenges that we might see from a training provider perspective. If you could wave a wand and say what needs to happen in terms of the system that means that those bite-sized learning, those quick win learning opportunities can actually be blessed, what would need to happen?
I think, and I'm going to ask Tulsia to elaborate, but I think that's a very good question. In my view, to wave a magic wand would be to number one, digitalize the accreditation system across all bodies, across the Department of Higher Education, the Council for Higher, the Department of DHETS, whatever that is, Department of Higher Education, yes, the Council for Higher Education, and 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 streamline the submission of reports, etc. For an example, if CETA goes into a training agreement with you, you have to submit 3 tranches of applications for payment during the course of that contract. And every time you have to submit the same documentation. If I apply for an extension of scope as a moderator, I have to submit all my stuff again, go and get it certified by the cops and then bring it all to TITA, all duplicated. So there's a lot of streamlining there. Secondly, and most importantly, the governance structures of all of these bodies need to be reformed to remove as much government participation as possible. For an example, in a CETA, the government appointees, the ministerial appointees, far outweigh the industrial appointees. So they don't really reflect the needs of industry. And those bodies themselves, to give you an example, our CETA, the transport CETA, has 8 chambers, and none of those chambers speak to one another. They all have a different methodology of accrediting providers, of moderating, releasing results, etc., etc. It's a complete mess. I have a friend who's called a futurist. His name is Clem Santa. And one of the things that he predicted a long time ago is what is called the red tape express, the Effendi Express. The Effendis were people in the Ottoman Empire. They were the civil servants, and they managed to drown the Ottoman Empire in red tape. That's exactly what's happening here. So, so the whole system needs to be very much more digitized, needs to be simplified, needs to be unified. Tasia, what would your view be on that one?
How many days do you have, Charles? So, look, it's an incredibly layered and complex question to answer. The entire system needs review. Do we need it the way it is? It's very bloated. I'll give you a typical example. One of the CETAs, has physical premises that's about 3 floors, and that floor, it's huge. The passageway itself is about 3 meters or something, And I walked through there and I asked myself, would any business in their right mind have premises this large, especially if you have such a big public mandate? So it just starts by, let's start thinking like business people. Start talking about customer service. How do we, so apart from, so that seat is paying per square meter. It's paying maybe 185, if I'm lucky, maybe 250 rand a square meter. And that's your levy money going there. So how good it would have been if we start becoming like the banks, the way the banks are working now, where you have plug and play areas. Those people don't sit in the office all the day. We walk in and you find a spot, you put your laptop in and you work. So you don't need to have all of these. And that's starting to think like the way we're moving forward in business. So that's the first thing. The second one, if you have a business, if there's people in your company that does not have the skills to deliver the service that you want to meet customer expectation, what would you do as business? But here we promote. So I'm saying we need to make sure every one of these need to make sure that as we write competencies for that sort of delivery, and we hold accountable for the delivery that happens. I called, and this is a personal experience, about 8 messages, and my calls were never returned. So if I were a business, I'd be out of business. So it's I think the short answer is it's so multi-layered that we've got to start at little bite size, and we've got to meet customer expectation. Thank you.
John, can I ask you a question?
Charles Shalma's also got a question, just note that.
Okay, let's take Shalma first. Shalma?
Thank you, Harry. Thank you, John. I just want to talk to the one slide where you said we should move away from qualification to skills development. And the question I want to ask is, how do we make that transition, at tertiary level when we are training the young minds? How do we make that qualification from not just only focusing on, make the transition not only focusing on qualification, but also the skills development? And if I may, I can also request Tulsi Naidu also to tap in and answer. Thank you.
If I can kick off just a really simple answer on this one, because we've seen this with a number of our degrees around the world, which are academic. What we've seen is a transition where the degree and master's delivery partner, what they've done is they've changed the structure, and they've emphasized much more employment ready skills. They've ensured that there's a year, or at least at minimum a 3-month industry placement within the core mandated modules. So whereas before it might have been an option, now it's compulsory that there is an industry placement, so you actually get real experience. There's a lot of reaching out. So a lot of universities here in the UK, instead of just letting their students do their dissertations, they ask local industry, what problem do you want solved, and can one of our students help you solve it? So I think it's not taking away the integrity of the first degree, and I'd be the last person to say that there is not a place for that. But in terms of being able to think not just about academic evidence, but also about workplace experience and also practical application, that whole thinking, I think, has got to really be layered on top of the degrees. So people are emerging, not oven ready, but they are emerging with a sensitization to what industry needs. That would be my take on it.
Perhaps I could come in. I do believe there's a place for the qualifications. If you look at what is these academic institutions and what do you learn from there? Apart from the actual content itself, it's a cognitive development that happens, your ability to embrace knowledge, to think, to articulate. So it's all those underpinning skills, which I believe is fundamental. But if you look at how qualifications are served, that I think is where the discourse needs to happen. That a lot more time and energy needs to embrace the Generation Z, as you would call it. How do they like to be served? Perhaps micro units building up to a larger cohort of learning and creating skills programs that would all kind of build on each other and be able to get you to that qualification space. There's different needs for qualifications and different times for, qualifications and skills programs. As a country, we need skills programs, I agree, because we have our unemployment rate, which is really incredibly high. And we need people to kind of get employable skills and be able to get out and build and start earning money and building the economy. So in that way, because of the nature of the problem, skills programs will work better. But there is a time and need for both. Thank you.
I think also I can see a lot of chatting going on between Shirley Lloyd and John. And I think let's wait until Shirley gives us her address, which is really focused on that. and then we can engage, because there will be a further panel discussion at the end, I would suggest. But if we're going on the discussion of how to improve things, I think that Tulsia really, to my mind, put it very succinctly. And I hope I'm not going to misquote you, Tulsia. Yeah. But basically what you were saying to industry is, industry, the system has effectively broken down. Pay your 1%, it's a tax, and write it off. Make sure that you, as the industry, address your skills needs, and don't rely on government to do that for you.
So, okay, what I said was you got to take ownership of it, okay, and know what it is and drive the solution. That's the first thing. But definitely not don't pay your 1% and see it as a tax. It's the contrary, actually. You're paying your 1% and demand for it back. So that's what I'm saying.
Great, great. Harry, how much time have we got? Any more questions?
So, Charles, I think we should conclude here, and then we can have the second panel discussion later on, discuss matters further then. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Let's give a big hand to our panelists. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. Hopefully you can join the second panel discussion as well. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gents, let's take a 5 minutes break, and I'll put up a timer for us, and I'll see you guys in 5 minutes time. Thank you very much. All right, colleagues, let's start taking up our seats again. Righty. Hopefully you've got that cup of coffee and a snack, and that we can start our second portion of this great event. So I just need to get my screen sorted out here. There we go. So we're still talking about capacity building in the transport sector. It's the 3rd of February 2022. And our next presenter is Melanie Naidu-Padiachi. She's the Head of People Development and Culture, Unitron Supply Chain Solutions. She's going to talk about the importance of training and skills development to ensure road safety. Thank you very much, Melanie.
Thank you so much, Harry. It's a pleasure to be here today, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to share some insight on my side. I'm just setting up on the screen side quickly so we can go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you. Okay. So as said by Harry, my name is Melanie, and I'm really just passionate about mobilizing people through learning and development solutions. I greet you from my home in Cape Town. I'm actually on the same side of town as the picture. So just out of interest, do we have any fellow Cape Townians here? Let's say hi in the chat. And just to see if I have anyone in the room from the same area. As you know, we are experiencing load shedding right now. Our slot was from 10 to 12:30. So I'm hoping that this UPS holds out. Okay, just a note, a team member of mine, B. Bota, will be assisting on the chat with links. So don't worry, she's not a random person trying to put any weight loss videos or Mashanisa trying to take your money. She's just here to assist with some links as we go through this talk. And I think it's important at this point that I just frame or put a bit of context into what I do at Unitrans and a bit of my history so that it provides a good grounding for the presentation that we are sharing this morning. So I've been a player in the transport industry for a number of years. I actually started out in the airline or aviation space, but I have found my home in the road transport space for the past 9 years with Unitrans. In terms of my team, I have an amazing team with very skilled individuals. We have 3 pillars in our team. We have technical training, which is an in-house driver training academy. We're also accredited by TITA in that space, and we provide all the training that we need for our drivers who are the core of our business. And we also partner with some other providers to look at other operator training and technical training that may be needed. We also have the skills development pillar that looks at qualifications, training needs, our CETA liaisons, as well as triple BE, and you can find things like apprenticeships, learnerships, and all sorts of bursary kind of programs there. The last pillar that we have is leadership and culture. This is where we're just trying to build our leadership capability to meet our strategic requirements, and also that a culture that we want to create is to be seen, heard, and appreciated by every employee that can feel that. So these are my views and experiences at Unitrans and the trajectory we chose as human capital professionals. So I hope you will enjoy and indulge with me. Okay, so let's look at the agenda. I wanted to rather cover the questions that I will seek to answer during my presentation. And I've got there sort of 5 topics of what I will cover. And we're focusing on skills development as an aid to road safety in our industry. So let's get started. I think for me, it's very important that as I look at any topic of conversation, I always find it interesting to look at the different definitions that exist out there, to be able to contextualize it. And I found that this definition by the UN of capacity building quite unique. And you can read it on the screen, but the part that really was highlighted to me or really stuck out for me is thriving in a fast changing world. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think of thrive, the word thrive, I think of health, I think of abundance, and most of all, I think about life. And you're welcome to share some words that pop into your mind as you look at the word thrive. Now, I just want to know, when we think of thrive, do we really foresee that it includes 26 out of every 100,000 people that die on our South African roads, as compared to the global average of 18 for every 100,000? Now that really just puts a sink in my heart and just helps me to look at this and say, look, are we really thriving? I just want to pause here for a moment. And I want to ask you, as the attendees to this webinar, how many people do you know that have lost their lives on our roads? And you, again, you're welcome to share in the chat. But as I think of this, it's friends, it's families, it's parents, siblings, even caregivers, economy builders, and children with erased futures. And if I reflect on it personally, there are several lives that I think of. In the 4 years that we look at these stats, I've put up lives lost on South African roads. We've got 4 years here. If we tabulate that, we're looking at nearly 50,000 lives that have been taken. You'll see that there's been a bit of a decline between 2017 and 2018, and that sharply comes down in 2019. But that little asterisk is just pointing out that that was the year that we were in a very heavy lockdown. Traffic flows were really low, and there weren't many people out on the roads. The 2021 report has not been released yet, but so far our minister has indicated that there's been a 14% increase just in the December numbers for fatalities. Now, the US has seen a similar uptake in their road death statistics in the past year. A professor from Temple University, his name is Frank Farley, he's advised that we're seeing a change in psychology in the world after COVID, and this is seen more reckless driving, and it's seen as people being rebellious as a reaction to the harsh restrictions. So this is one angle. The other angle is also that we've had less driving time and experience on the road, and those skills are not as sharp as they would have been back in 2019. All about. Taking this into account, I think that we as an industry need to anticipate the capabilities that we require to navigate the new challenges the transport environment will face. The Minister of Transport, Fikile Mbalula, anticipates that the road accident fund will increase to 518 billion in the 2023-2024 financial year. That's making it the largest contingent liability. So I just want to ask the question back, and I'm going to take you back to that the second slide, on how are we adapting, and are we really thriving if this is the anticipation for what's to come? Just to cement this why conversation, here are the top 10 causes of deaths in South Africa. I've taken the 2019 pre-COVID stats here and just looking at it, and if we zoom in here, we're looking at number 8. I mean, if we look above number 8, all 7 causes are linked to health, and number 8 stems out and looks at us, and it's all about road injuries. So this is something that is deeply linked to us, not only as stakeholders in this environment, but as the transport industry and as road users. So whilst there's a deep-seated need to maybe strategize and understand how our industry will evolve and what skills we actually need, we need to place equal importance on the capabilities, that's required to address such systemic issues. So here's the statement that I want to leave with you in terms of the why. Is there really progress? And can we build capacity without ensuring that we are dealing with foundational issues that actually cost us lives on the road? I'm going to leave that with you for a second. So where does the responsibility lie? We talked a lot just now, I could see it coming out in the Q&A about, how do we partner? How do we get different entities to help us to achieve these targets as business and as training providers? But we can look at these entities and, we can say, who do we blame? Is it the government for the policy or the lack of legal frameworks? Is fraud too rife? Is it corruption? Could it be the management around this? There's not enough surveillance. Can we blame it on the private entities and industry for not channeling enough of, say, corporate social investment towards this sort of problem? Or is it our communities for not standing together or doing enough in terms of programs or awareness to educate drivers? Just looking at this, what I do know is that taking a theory test and a license once off, and then having to renew it just based on eyesight and an application form is definitely not enough for our current landscape in the driving space. And the education that we're giving pedestrians is not enough. As Unitrans, we are seeing almost half of our accidents involve pedestrians. And then the same with head-on collisions. It's looking at external factors that are impacting our business and our profits and our lives as transport custodians. So for me, while we can sort of pinpoint in these different entities what is the problem, where does it lie, I really think that we need to contribute and unite to look at this road injury epidemic. And as transporters, we need to become much harder on ourselves. And that quote comes to mind about being the change that we want to see in the world. So looking at that, as Unitrans, we wanted to tackle the situation, knowing that the core of our business are our drivers and have such an impact out on our roads. We wanted to know, how do we take their skill level and address the risks that we are seeing? So we decided to improve the skills capability and the practices needed to cater for the learning process of skills, attitude, knowledge, and competence. We looked at 5 links that address these sort of risks that we highlighted, and we developed the solutions around that. So the first one is training. And for training, we analyzed the business needs. We looked at past learnings, accidents, incidents, and we created a bespoke training curriculum that uses unit standard learning, but then adds other various learning methodologies to aid in retention and to address gaps that we had as a business. And I heard this comment coming earlier that full qualifications is not always possible as a business. It's not always something we can do. We have more than 3,000 drivers. That's quite an outlay of time and resources to drive that. So we tend to do it in smaller numbers. But what we can do is break this up into pieces and create curriculums that work for us and our business. So one of the things that we looked at here is that we wanted to put ourselves in the seat of the driver. And what does that mean? We consider things like, if you look at business and strike action and how that impacted us, we then introduced the understanding of owning businesses and how these kind of actions impact the livelihood in the long term of the business. And not only will it impact that driver, but also the community as a whole. We looked at customer representation. Why do you have to wear a uniform? Why does it help to be polite and courteous to the customer? How does that help us to keep and sustain business over the long run? And the same with the emergencies. I think, we talked a lot about unit standards. We found that using the full unit standard for firefighting and for first aid was not adapted to our environment because it's a generic unit standard. So we took pockets of what we needed and what would be relevant to a driver out on the road, and we reformed that sort of education to fit around that. The next side to this is technical, and for technical, what was really important to us is that we needed to be cognizant of the vehicles in our business, the change in the vehicles. As we know, they're becoming more technologically advanced and inclined, and our skill set has to migrate with that. We look at pre and post trip inspections and how vital that is in preventing road accidents. And we also look at things like load and route information according to the customers that we serve. And this is quite a critical space because as a training academy, we cannot sort of train all the drivers in all the business sort of technical aspects. So we've adopted a model where there's generic training that happens centrally, and then per business unit, we've got dedicated trainers that see to the very ins and outs of the technical knowledge. The next side we have is on the practical side. And this is a big one because I think it's such a practical activity to drive. And you cannot just have a driver sitting in class trying to learn everything through theory. We need to have a chance to showcase their practical elements, not just in driving, but around all the other skills that we're trying to develop our drivers in. So for this, we do in-cab assessments. We've also developed actual video simulations where it will take you through and around our trucks, and the drivers have a chance to view that. For firefighting, we don't just talk about it in theory. We actually get the whoever's in that classroom on the day around, and a fire is lit in a very controlled environment, and the drivers then have an opportunity to practice the skills that they've learned. We've done the same for CPR, that we have dolls, first aid dummies in each of our classrooms so that the skill can be practiced, because we know that in times of emergency, the brain, takes over. Flight circumstances can be overpowering, and we want to just get into the rhythm of doing things. The next one we look at here is refresher training, and this is coming back to the frequency. We try to make sure that we frequent the training. It's not a once-off activity. We need to embed it into our daily practices. So we have things like refresher training in classroom. We've adopted gamification to do any of the skills and all of the modules that the drivers go through before they're assessed. We also have incorporated toolbox or maybe safety talks into the organization that happens quite regularly with the contracts. And then also we have coaching that really wants to then bridge the experience of the driver to the theory and make sure that this driver is performing in the well-rounded manner that we expect him or her. The last one that we have here is monitoring. And monitoring is really a beautiful sort of end result to this. And it's quite a large section of our business in operational excellence. We have lots of onboard technology and systems tracking our drivers and also assessing risk scoring of every single driver and the environment. So this really helps us to manage and track our progress on the journey, and to understand that, as the industry and as the conditions on the roads change, how are we evolving and updating our training and our commitment to our drivers to ensure that they are well equipped on the roads. Now, all this has been said in terms of the program, but I want to share with you one fundamental shift that we use to motivate our drivers to partner with us. And I'm talking about changing the narrative, and it's all about motivation. And motivation is key in ensuring partnership, especially regulatory training that can be very tedious over time, because we've elected to run our unit standard lining biannually, and we also then do in-cabs. So it can become quite monotonous for the driver, and the lack of partnership is rife over years of doing this. So how did we shift the narrative in order to improve the driver's motivation? Daniel H. Pink, he's one of my favorite thought leaders, and he has a lovely TED talk. It's actually from a while back, and it's titled Drive. The link is in the chat if you'd like to view it later. The video is about how intrinsic motivators drive better performance in individuals than extrinsic motivators. It's quite interesting, and he says something there about how science says one thing and business does another. So the approach we took in how we wanted to tackle this with our drivers was saying, instead of going, the law says that you must do this, or the rule is this, and this is the disciplinary action. Of course, we still have disciplinary processes in place, but instead of using that carrot stick approach, we changed it around and said, we want you to return home safely to your loved ones. So how do we partner to make this happen? And that mind shift, just changing our development program to talk to the driver in that way, changing the language used to partner with them, to share in their fears and their joys and the trials and tribulations that exist for a driver, meant that we were on their sides and that we were doing this because we want to save lives. We want to see our employees return home because it's quite crazy out on the roads. So this sort of approach works well if you link it to a process of how intrinsic motivation can carry forth. So I'm just going to share with you what we call the sources of intrinsic motivation. And this is the work of Professor Kenneth Thomas that we've used. So the first one there is that intrinsic motivation needs to link to meaningfulness. So we want our drivers to commit to a purpose. So the angle we took here is saying to our drivers, with our trucks, we understand that South Africa stops. And I see I'm at 21 minutes, so I'm going to move faster here. The next one we had is choice, and that's about choosing the best way, and it's your choice as the driver of that vehicle and how you choose to maneuver that vehicle going forward. The next one is competence, and we want the driver to feel fully capable and confident to be able to tackle the journey ahead as a professional driver. And then the last one there is progress, having that confidence to know you're doing things right and knowing that for each stop this driver makes, they are helping South Africa succeed one stop at a time. And the feedback from our drivers has been incredible in terms of this approach and how we've put them at the center of how we want to create change. But as the saying goes, with every great development program, there has to be an equally great company to back it up. So the last part that I want to look at here is how do we integrate skills into a holistic capacity building so that we can improve the adoption and the success rate. So just on this, if I work through it as organizations, we need to build capacity, but this can only be achieved with the right capabilities in place and integration into our culture. So this model is one that we used, adapted from McKinsey's capacity framework. And the methodology was really developed to help companies to assess where they are and use learning to improve to where they need to be. So if I had to look at this and quickly align it to our business aspirations, we really just wanted to be a business that had zero harm and a safe working environment. In the strategy side, we looked at, how do we have our SHEC, operational, audit, risk teams all aligned to the strategy that drives safety on our business. And then I think one of the most important, and I've heard it before, is the leadership and management role, that we need to walk the talk. We cannot expect our drivers to wear seatbelts if we are not displaying that kind of character and being the example in the business. Then under organizational capabilities, this really ties into what Charles and Dulcia were saying earlier, and that is really understanding how VUCA or the fourth or even fifth industrial revolution is going to impact your business and what are the capabilities required. And the good thing is that for this model, you can use it on any program or capacity building initiative that you had. Just on the bottom element there, I'm not going to go into each of them because of time, but I do want to touch on assets and financial resources. I think that's probably one of the biggest areas of concern as a corporate. And there we do need to find ways to prioritize capacity development, even in this tight market that we find ourselves in. So really looking at avenues like BBBE, TITA partnerships through DGs and flagship programs. And if you don't have the resources in-house, it would make sense to partner with some of the providers like Tulsia and others that have these sort of ins and outs of how this works, so that you can have that financial assistance to gain programs and to put that into budgets in your organization. So all of these elements create contributing factors that drive culture. And in our case, the culture of safety that prioritizes life and the role that we have as transporters in that. So I see I'm over time. I'm going to skip this video of playing it now, but I'm going to ask you to pop this link in the chat. It's a short video. It's about 2 minutes. It is so critical in understanding or putting that perspective to life. Earlier, I talked about 50,000 lives being lost. This video that was created in Australia about understanding the impact and perspective of life is really beautiful. I wish I could have shared it with you, but I'm sure that link is in the chat. Thank you. Thank you, B. Okay. So I think in closing, I believe the responsibility really lies with each of us, within our spheres of influence and as users of the roads that we all share, both in our professional and in our personal seats. I think as a driver of a vehicle, it means, adhering to the rules of the road, taking accountability for the vehicle and our occupants, that they wear their seatbelts. And I think it also is about pedestrians. If we use the roads in pedestrian format, that we understand and engage and try to learn more and educate ourselves on road safety. And I think as friends, that's one of the last points is, as friends, when we have, when we go out together or we have people over, are we really taking it on ourselves to ensure that our guests are using the right mode of transport if they are under the influence? So I'm Melanie, and I'm the daughter and friend of several road accident victims. And I really just want to pledge to use the skills that I have as a learning and development professional to build future skill, but also influence change that we need around safety. And I hope that you will join me in this. It's been an absolute blessing to share my insight and to learn from the panel here. My details are in the chat. Let's connect, let's learn, and let's grow together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Melanie. What a great presentation. And it's excellent to see this practical approach, to change the narrative. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Harry.
Yes, so we're going over to our next presenter, Juliette Fourie. She's the CEO of Metrominds. She's going to talk about aligning capacity building with business strategy. Thank you, Juliette. Juliette, it's telling us that you started screen sharing. I don't know why it's not coming through. Maybe if you can unmute, we can talk.
My apologies, I didn't want to unmute. For some reason, my buttons were stuck. So let's just try that again.
No problem, no rush. I'm ready if you want me to share your slides on your behalf.
Okay, are you going to, that's maybe what I was struggling with now. I thought
let's see, I'll try again.
Okay, let me just share that. Okay. All right, can you, not yet.
There we go.
You see it?
Excellent.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, excellent stuff. Right. Okay, there it goes. Excellent. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. Thank you, Harry. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for joining the Transport Forum for today. And it's really quite a lot of relevant topics. We heard great things from previous speakers, and I'm sure that we can all take a lot out of today's session. So yes, guys, it gives me great pleasure to really talk just about the alignment of capacity building with business strategy. And it really is a topic that I've just heard quite a lot of people are talking about, especially today as well, and really how the responsibility is on private businesses and business owners and us as training providers to do things differently, and how are we actually aligning real capacity building, not just skills development. And I'm sure Dr. Shirley Lloyd will talk more about what is real capacity building, but how do we actually get that right? So in terms of skills development, I mean, we know that that is the primary ingredient to assist with unemployment and future economic growth. The scarce skills discourse has been one of the main topics of reason for the last 40 years in South Africa. Ongoing poverty, unemployment, inequality have been blamed due to scarce skills in South Africa, and it's not being addressed despite many, many efforts. And Dr. Tulsi also spoke about that. As stated by a recent published journal, the South African economy has the fastest growing youth across the globe. Over 12 million young people are affected by unavailability of jobs and missing work skills. The triple challenge of course, inequality, poverty, and unemployment in its interdependent require really policymakers to actually sit up straight and pay attention. Insufficient education leading to poor communication skills, lack of problem solving, decision making, business awareness, technology, just basic knowledge basically are most definitely becoming the dilemma of the private industry and the sector. In a recent report from Deloitte, they stated that the youth consisted of 1.8 billion people globally, or youth globally. And it's predicted by 2030, which is very close, more than half of the youth will not have skills to participate in the emerging workforce. So this is in turn translates to 50% of our future human capital that are potentially unprepared to enter the workforce. The high rates of youth unemployment continue leaving a trail behind of resource shortages in a very complex environment, and especially in an environment like transport. The skills demand and supply in South Africa alludes to 32% share of the workforce in South Africa having a mismatch then, also between qualification and job. So creating credible skills planning mechanisms is really important to understand demand and supply and alignment of capacity needed to drive business strategy. Looking at the economic state, labor profiles, the current demand, the future demand, that would assist us. But we are a little bit stuck in the now and the how. What about the future? So what is really our reality here? And it's an interesting one because we've also spoken about this, and I think we all feel very passionate about this compliance struggle and compliance fatigue versus what the realities of business really is. So due to the regulations that's been put in place, skills development has really become a regulation and compliance exercise and not a need and demand exercise. And I remember the days when sitting in front of business managers and developing programs around fit for purpose, not around compliance. And people were upskilled. So, there are great policies in place, and I think the implementation is just not always well thought through. So, of course, we have this dilemma of a financial year, a BE target, employment equity targets, skills development targets, and then our own financial targets, chasing revenue, chasing profit margins, making sure we keep customers, and they don't align. So we understand that this has become quite a complex situation in South Africa. I mean, according to Stats South Africa, the transport sector contributes to an average of 6% of employment in South Africa, with a 9% growth over the last 3-4 years. In 2019, the transport sector had 1,200 workplace skills plan and annual reports actually submitted. And with all of them, only 20% of the levy payers are actually contributing to these reports and trying to, I almost want to say, extrapolate some funding from this cycle. And as you have seen with Tulsia, Dr. Tulsia, it's not easy. The big thing is only 6% of this industry actually submit their reports. So it's really difficult that we are driving a compliance agenda, but only a small portion of the industry is actually participating. So skills development is truly driven by regulation and not by business strategy. And that causes quite a big dilemma. So if your business has lost the art of driving business strategy without looking at the skills strategy, the differentiator becomes lost. A business that differentiates itself by developing skills and workforce strategies aligned to business and not compliance is a business fit between strategy and workforce differentiation. This creates a skills development dilemma, very much funding dependent, compliance fatigued, and not looking at structured talent pipelines and fully capacitating humans to actually do their job properly and especially for the future. We drive extreme measures in business and commercial strategies to fill sales pipelines to achieve business key objectives. Why should it be any different with people? People are our biggest assets, right? If they are not the right people with the wrong skills, they actually become your biggest liability. So people are not your biggest asset. The right people are your biggest asset. And how do we actually change our approach to say, are we being driven by a tick box, or are we actually driven by what the business needs are? So in terms of the reality of business strategy at the moment, this is what it currently looks like. It's very silocytis. It's illustrating that really most businesses are trying to execute strategies, but it's not integrated. It's not connected. They don't drive the same agenda, but rather different agendas. So managing human capital in business strategies require an integrative approach, a system thinking approach, where we are actually developing the workforce to align to our business strategies. HR should play a different role. Poor HR has been given the task of all these targets and compliance ticks, and we lost the art of actually finding a balance between what does the business need, and when the business is actually aligned with that, the compliance will tick over automatically. But it is important to understand what is most important in the business. So the approach allows then managers rather to go to a systems approach and saying, you know what is the actual strategic objective of the business? And how does all the other things align to that? 99% of the time, you would fit all the compliance and regulation in there anyway. But we forget what skills development is about. We have been so dependent on funding and grants and administration of CETAs, and businesses only train because they're waiting for funding. They don't budget anymore for the need of skill. They budget to have a budget, and that's completely wrong. So what is the real differentiator for the future? There's understanding the future skills and understanding how do I actually plan in that for the future. So let's look at it a little bit. I mean, I think, Melanie, you spoke about Fourth Industrial Revolution, but engaging in literature all across the board in Fourth and Fifth Industrial Revolution, the sustainability of human capital aligned to future changes of the sector in questions are really out there. The alignment of future skills required should be a priority in anticipation for the next decade. Like the Fourth Industrial Revolution is really focusing on the use of technology, big data, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, robotics. The Fifth Industrial Revolution incorporates human intelligence and human capital to enable the Fourth Industrial Revolution to collaborate with the experiences of customers and of users. We have been so bogged down about internal processes, we forget about that customer experience. People have lost the art of communication, have lost the art of that emotional connotation when I am serving someone else, and a robot cannot do that. The vision of the fifth industrial revolution is mass personalization and customization, and that's made possible by the cooperation between man and machine, as human and artificial intelligence can work together in harmony. Even Elon Musk tweeted recently that in a statement that excessive automation was a mistake and that humans are truly underrated. So the concept of that Society 5.0, Fifth Industrial Revolution, it's actually been promoted by the Japanese government since 2015, an idea which places the society as a whole at the center of technology development rather than the industry, giving technology the role of a catalyst and a driver. Society 5.0 aims at the general welfare of members of the society and striving towards building a super intelligent society technology ecosystem. And this talks to exactly what the previous speaker, Melanie, spoke about are we actually conscious about our society? Are we telling our friends you can't drink and drive? And how are people getting more involved in that? So that is the future. AI has the potential to help optimize things like manufacturing for sustainability, helping industry produce new, accurate, repeatable outcomes. Taking in consideration the fourth industrial revolution demands, there are unlimited possibilities related to human connectivity and access to knowledge. Anything that cannot be automated for the future will become extremely valuable. Technology represents how things will change, but human represents the why. Asking the questions. We can only emerge if we ask questions. If you look at the Welsh Cynefin framework, the unknown world where we create new things and emerging patterns sits in complexity. And complexity can only be treated when we probe and we sense and we act. It is not treated about we just sense, we probe, we ask questions. And only humans can ask that why. We can use the enablers of technology to make sure the why gets done. So what does this look like for the future? And how do we as businesses need to align better to capacity when we look at the future? So, and I quite like the saying about if business is not listening to the youth and to what is coming, then you might as well not compete in the future. So jobs of the future are being explored by many researchers and predicting a growing demand for what is referred to as enterprise skills. Now, this is the very old soft skills, as we all refer to it. I have to say, I believe it's not soft at all. It's very hard. Why all of a sudden is people wanting to go back to basics? Because they lost the art of communicating properly, serving the customer, doing the basic things that matter, that a machine and automation cannot do. It's about transferable skills, allowing people to navigate complex job functions in different industries. Enterprise skills include digital literacy, huge one, 212%, communication, creativity, teamwork, problem solving, critical thinking, financial literacy. Critical thinking is underpinned by having context. Context is about you are actually exploring the full story. We all complain that people can't critically think, but we only give them half the truth. And we don't allow necessarily in business for people to ask questions. So what is context really? Context is about if you are able to ask more questions, I get more truth and I can make a better decision and I can solve better problems. I heard the other day someone referred to us as this generation of people as pancake people. We have pancake thinking, and I quite like that analogy. It says that we are thinly spread in our thinking and widely spread. We don't uncover things anymore. We don't emerge. People sit behind their computers in our workplaces, and they are being told to do A and B, and please don't step out of that line, don't give them the opportunity to actually think. And that is a huge problem. So it's estimated that jobs really of the future will demand 70% more of this type of skill. Skills development will be provided through experiences, immersion. I'm extremely passionate about simulation, augmented practices, accelerated learning practices. So very different to the traditional way that we've always trained and upskilled people. The percentage of jobs that demand critical thinking is increased by 158%. Creativity, we need to analyze and create. That power of and. We need to be able to present ourselves and our solutions. Teamwork. It's becoming as important for job entry as a technical skill. So where does this leave us? I mean, it's with skills development. So most organizations completely halted any education and training during the last 2 years. We felt it, and yes, Tulsia training providers, we not just became resilient because of the regulation, but also with the last 2 years. Everyone's just stopped. The skills dilemma really exploded even more because of only focused compliance that has been done. Misaligned strategies completely. There's been a great resignation across many businesses. Besides that, a lot of retrenchments happened, which leaves us with a massive skills gap in most companies. So how do we drive a strategy without taking into consideration that happened? I mean, your entire vision of the strategy needs to change. The skills dilemma is then further obviously enhanced by that misalignment. So the challenges are really the funding models. Of course, people suffered through this time. People don't have time to train. All of a sudden, they are thinly stretched because of this resignation and departure and brain drain and immigration and semigration and all kinds of things. And all of a sudden, we want to upskill, but we don't have the time. We want to upskill our people, but the people itself do not know what they need skills on. So they do not understand the reality of where they are and where they need to go. So there's a lot of pressure on business and coaches and mentors and managers to actually try and give that context of where am I, where do I need to be, and what do I need to get there? And that might be, yes, in the form of a formal qualification or just exposure, just a little bit more exposure to my business or to my customer, and to informal training and informal learning. Learning is learning, but how do we actually articulate this thing? So the skills of the future and the opportunities that goes with that, it really sits in that digital literacy, creativity, problem solving, leadership, relationships, accelerated learning. I mean, it's fascinating how all of a sudden people really are saying, can we just go back to that basics? Relationships, ethical leaders. How many things have happened in the past 2 years that we think, well, are we driving a culture of leadership and ethical leadership? Do we only drive leadership from leaders with a title? Or can we actually say that we're creating a culture of leadership without titles? So how do we manage our cultures differently? The opportunity in that is you know, I'm definitely a very optimistic, positive person, and even in times like this, is how do we actually make sure that positive drive is there? How do we drive that culture forward? The opportunities in all of this is that online, self-paced, micro-learning, accelerated learning, where people can experience a different type of learning, simulation. Still, the CETAs don't recognize simulation as work-based experience, which is nonsense. How does a pilot fly a plane? They get flight simulating hours, and that's exactly what they need to fly a plane. They keep their licenses intact by just doing that. So why is that exempted from business? It should be the same. So the opportunity is that customization. Like the fifth industrial revolution says, personalization, customization. And this is actually where, and like Tulsia said earlier, we are passionate about training and skills development as providers. And unfortunately, yes, some regulations and I think some past practices have really given training providers a different perspective or perception that people had. And it's important to talk to a provider. Say, if you can't design that skill yourself, then marry with someone, hold their hands and walk that path together, because that's where it's going, is to create that new type of future and link it to the future skills. And only in that, we would be able to align to business strategies at the end of the day. So I see that I tried to go through it quite quickly. I think I have about 5 minutes left. So I think the big thing here is, how do we actually now take this and take it as our ticket of admission for the next decade of competitiveness? I do firmly believe that capacity building is not just I train someone and there's a tick box and that's it. It is a continuous talent pipeline. It is looking at the now, yes, the realities of what is needed now, what is needed for the future, where are the gaps, and those future skills are the most important things that we need to focus on now, because people are becoming your biggest competitive edge. It's your biggest differentiator in your business. And if you leave that and not link it to your people strategy, then you're going to be lost. So in terms of that few critical skills, managing that relationships with measurements and collaboration is crucially important. Relevant solutions that caters for emerging practices. And what is the emerging practices? If we look at the fourth industrial revolution, it's already past us. If you're not part of that ship, you're going to drown anyway. But how do we take our people and put it in the center again? How do we go back to that? I almost want to say 20, 30 years and say, who is the most important? How do we drive a strategy? We start with highly motivated, skilled workforce. And if we don't have that workforce, we need to work on that workforce. That drives a very good sound internal processes that serves the customer with a good customer experience. And that in turn drives the profit. I mean, we can learn from so many business strategists and leadership gurus over the years. People first, strategy second. Jim Collins, good to great. So now's the time. So reframe your thinking and really go back to why skills development. We've been forced to start paying a levy and it became a tax. And that is a different burden on us as businesses. But we can still maneuver through that structure. Through that structured process, we can still be innovative. So reframe and rethink. And yeah, hopefully for the future, we look at skills development very different. So thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Juliet. This was excellent. I think the fifth industrial revolution is going to offer a lot, especially in the skills development field as well, not only in business, but in skills development. So thank you very much for this interesting presentation. It's really driven by what business needs, and clearly you guys know what you're talking about. Thank you so much. I think the guys looking forward to engaging with you in the panel discussion. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gents, we now at our last presentation, but not the least, obviously, and that is Dr. Shirley Lloyd. She's a strategic advisor in QF, RPL, and education, training, and skills development. And she's going to talk about the need for new capacity building in this rapidly evolving logistics environment. Thank you very much, Shirley. I will share the slides on your behalf.
Thank you. Good morning. Well, it's good afternoon to all the people in the room today, and thank you for the opportunity to be able to share. So I'm talking about the need for new capacity building in a rapidly evolving logistics environment. And each of the presenters have spoken a bit about capacity building. I'm going to be a bit theoretical initially and actually define it and describe it, because capacity building is never static. Next slide, please. Yeah. So capacity building is defined as a systematic and integrated approach that includes education and training, human resource development, knowledge management, and knowledge networks to develop and continuously improve governmental or organizational or individual competencies and capabilities, very important. And these are necessary to achieve safe, secure, and sustainable, and in this case, I took the definition because it was the fullest one, nuclear power program, and if we are to say sustainable, evolving logistics environment and your transport environment. So it's hugely important to understand that capacity building, never static, it is an ongoing process. Next slide, please. So what is capacity building? The term capacity building actually emerged long ago. There's very little new under the sun. It's really how we approach it, how we see it. And we've heard a lot about tick box approach, and we've heard a lot this morning also about what appears to be or have been a very static environment in the education and training and skills development space. I'm actually becoming quite positive about the education and training skills development space because there are so many new things happening in the quality councils, in the NQF environment, in the departmental environment, in a regulatory space, where we are actually seeing the regulators and the people working in those spaces realizing that they have to change and move very quickly. So our ability to capacity build and our ability to develop people and enable people to be developed, I think, is becoming a far more positive space. So capacity building, it emerged long ago. It is included in programs of most companies, but sadly, it became just one of those items, capacity building. And people will go to capacity building workshops. And in the capacity building workshop, they'll think you sit and listen to a presenter and off you go. That is not capacity building. Capacity building has a whole lot of things in it. So sadly, the true meaning got totally lost along the way. And we need to define it within an organization. Next slide, please. So I've presented one or two or three different pictures of what capacity building actually includes. So it's development, it's skills development in all its different forms, formal, non-formal, even informal, smaller chunks of learning, etc. It's coaching and mentoring. It's building knowledge. I think that was one of the biggest criticisms in the older system against the qualification, development, and design, that the unit standards tended to be very narrow, very small, and the whole knowledge project, if we call it that in the world of academia, the knowledge project took a back seat. And I agree with John, who spoke earlier. It's a mixture of knowledge supported by experience and all of those good things. So the knowledge project, it's teaching and learning, it's support, all of those things. Next slide, please. So there we see capacity building as well, a picture of it. This one, there's one area that I would have added in. You've got capacity building, you've got the needs assessment. And that's why I say it's new. It cannot just be, capacity building is done and there it is. Every year, because we're living in a fast-paced, changing world, 4, 5, 6 industrial revolution. So the needs assessment of your people and it needs to be done regularly. And just now we're going to look at some of the new inventions and things happening in your industry. And we're going to ask questions about how quickly can we capacity build and have the programs ready. So there's the whole process then of your needs assessment. And if you look through there's the design of your capacity building program. And that design includes how you think about interacting with a formal qualification, with an accredited provider, accredited through one of the quality councils, How you think about working with professional bodies, hugely important, because the professional body carries the standard of what should be there and building of the profession, the community of expert practitioners, and the design of a whole suite and range of projects and programs. And then, of course, the implementation, monitoring, and then the one that I would have put in here would have been evaluation, and then the sort of iteration. So the steps, next slide, please, that I've actually looked at this and added in. So what are these steps? We've said there's a needs assessment. You engage with all the stakeholders. Those are professional bodies, providers, whoever, government, industry, business, all of those, the learners, people who actually work, the workers, the trade unions, a whole lot of people you engage with. Then you assess the capacity needs, you develop your program, implement it, you then monitor and evaluate the capacity of what you've done, update and refresh the program. Next slide, please. So the slide seems to be on that side, Harry, a little bit squiggly. I don't know if the people are also seeing it in a squiggly way, but let me read. I've got another screen here that I'm looking at. So in the rapidly evolving logistics environment, what are some of the key issues coming out of the international literature, out of the news, out of what we read and what we are experiencing on a daily basis? We know there are many themes. I've just pulled out 3 or 4. Technology developments, consumer behavior, identified challenges and some solutions there, and what is the industry and the sector developments? How are they responding to all of these things? And these are very new and happening as we speak, and we have to take note of those. So the first one, next slide, please. The next one is the self-driving or electric or self-automated trucks, for example. If you're looking at road transport, we also know there's a lot of discussion in the airline industry or in the aviation industry, aerospace, in the not only trucks, but vehicles, shipping, the trains, all of those areas. But if we just look at trucks, now this is a very interesting, and I read a number of articles about this very interesting issue. The driver remains present throughout in the truck. And the driver is present mainly at the pickup and delivery stages. Juliet referred to the human factor, that dance, in fact, between automation, artificial intelligence, and the human being. So the driver is there, and that interface, that service delivery is hugely important. Then the driving component itself is done by the self-driven truck or electrical truck or whatever. And it actually it takes much shorter. So there's quicker delivery of product and almost a safer environment of the product. And that raises the question, how equipped are our supply chains, our warehouses, our people to make all of that happen? So if you're having quicker delivery and quicker times of a product being fetched and delivered, how are your other systems within your supply chain measuring up? The next slide, please, Harry, is what we call the electronic data interchange and electronic or EDI. And it is a technology that helps trading partners and organizations get more done, speed up logistics timelines, and eliminate manual errors by automating business-to-business communications. Very important. And I remember reading one of the dissertations of a particular student in her master's studies, where she actually spoke about the cost of an error in a huge logistics environment, in a shipping environment, and how important, for example, simulation is, but this electronic data interchange, very important. It helps organizations that produce, that ship, that purchase or sell goods, and that from the retail and manufacturers to the logistics firms, airlines, etc., all of them. EDI is in every space in that whole supply chain, in that whole interaction. And it's real time. and it's bi-directional exchange of data, and it's becoming more important every day. So there's even moves in some countries to establishing customer portals. I've seen that. You can track how far your little parcel is, where it's going, etc. Next slide talks about CMR, or the contract for international carriage of goods. And CMR is hugely important and becoming more and more important because the world is really flat. And we know people are buying more and more online, and Amazon and all of these people have had huge surges, especially during COVID. Remembering COVID was one of the biggest disruptors ever in our lifetime of teaching, learning, supply chains, logistics, you name it. And so CMR is the description of the transported goods and the packaging method used. And as we look at green economies and sustainability, we realize more and more people want to know who made the product, how was it sourced, was child labor involved, how is it packaged, etc., etc. So the CMR is also hugely important. And in South Africa, I think that we think about those things, and we do see more and more articles and practices encompassing CMR. And then automating key nodes within supply chain. And this is intelligent automation, and it enables efficient, effective, and safe operations, including stores, warehouses, manufacturing facilities, and even corporate office buildings. So we're seeing the whole world of technology, specifically in this presentation, in the logistics space, and in the space of our transport, road transport, whatever, using those. The other part of technology, next slide, please, is robotization in logistics. I don't like talking to a robot. I even one day in a call center asked the other end of the telephone if they were a robot. And then I asked them a different question and they gave me the same answer. So I told them, well, you are a robot, because you would not be saying that if you were not a robot. So robotization is important in the correct space. And it's moving from being a luxury to a necessity. The value add of robotics in the logistics process is now being emphasized more and more. And they do make the load lighter, the workload lighter, and in fact, in warehousing, obviously robotics, use of robots, etc. And in packing of goods, robotics and robots are hugely important. And then the digitalization of freight transport. So there are a lot of technological developments. Ask yourself the question while I'm speaking about this. Do we have qualifications? Do we have continuing professional development programs? Are our professional bodies involved in giving information, helping design CPD? Are there short courses? Are there short bits of learning? Skills programs that can be written, developed to develop the types of skills that people are going to need very quickly to be able to manage all these technological changes, because that is capacity building as well. The next slide, please, Harry, deals with consumer behavior. And I found this in my research to be very interesting. We all know that people have moved hugely to online orders and delivered packages, and that demand has grown. That was the next slide, Harry, after the robotization. So there was a very interesting article I read on e-fulfillment, the actual excitement that people feel when their package arrives that they've ordered online, and it's called e-fulfillment. So there we go. So the logistics industry, everything in related to it, transport, supply chain, the whole thing. You also have a feel-good factor for the recipient of the goods that comes along your whole process. There's an important and interesting issue that they're calling it multi-channel delivery. And so people will order something online, but they will also ask to collect it at a particular store. And interestingly, when they go into that store, they will then also look around at other products and things in store and buy that. So there's a win-win. And modern retail stores need to behave more like mini distribution centers now, which again engages your industry. as an extension to the supply chain. And we haven't thought of it like that before, but they are in fact becoming mini distribution centers. And if you go into a Woolies or a Checkers or a Pick n Pay, and you know within an hour you get your groceries, and you see the shoppers on behalf of people like you and me, maybe inside the store. They're mini distribution centers. They're packing their trolleys, taking it through, and off it goes, gets packaged, and there the driver's waiting to take it to a you or to a me. And then retailers are moving towards integrating all channels into a single, modern, efficient way of working. And this impacts your industry very directly. Next slide. An important thing that has happened through COVID is the revival of community. And where people used to be very I-focused, I, me, and my, and what's in it for me, the COVID pandemic, and I think other things like climate change, green economies, food security, all of those good things, and those are mentioned in the economic recovery, that ERRP program and district development models, but certainly in our industry, we are seeing that when there has been a crisis, the pandemic, such as the pandemic, people start behaving differently. And this impacts the industry as well. So there's a shift from I to we. And this could permanently change consumer behavior. And again, how we buy, what we buy, where we buy. And also the shift from personal gain towards products, services, and experiences that can be shared and enjoyed with others. So we have to accommodate this newfound buying behavior. So what does this look like? Next slide, please. There will be a lot more community-centric buying, such as bulk and wholesale products, combined shipping, and group deals. And your supply chain and warehouse must work together with a future forward plan. So what is, I've mentioned the impact of, sorry, I'm just putting my phone off there. The impact of COVID has affected, next slide, every part of the value chain, from the raw material sourcing right to the customer. It is testing commercial, operational, financial, and organizational resilience. It has highlighted the risks and the resiliency gaps for companies. Can companies cope? And I've just moved from Johannesburg to Somerset West about 3 weeks ago. I won't mention the name of the company, but I will certainly never use them again, the removal company. And it's left an incredibly negative experience for me as a client. So these are things, and people don't realize that tipping point issue. And 67% in an article I read of the CEOs are saying they will increase their investment in disruption detection and innovative processes. Now, what are I'm very aware of time. What are these disruptions that we have to be aware of? And again, ask yourself as I'm going through this, how are our staff trained? How are we trained? How are the company board members? How are the CEOs trained? How are we capacity built to cope with all of this? Are there CPD programs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? If not, why not? How do we get there? And maybe these shorter bursts of learning, working collaboratively with other countries, other groups, et cetera. So the logistics disruption, we saw what happened, for example, during COVID. Consumer goods couldn't come through, shortages. Another big disruption was the Suez Canal. Who would have thought that it would have been blocked? That was a huge logistics disruptor. Shutdowns of ports and airports where goods were piled up to go, but because of COVID, they couldn't fly. The global trade flows were restricted and the import-export system severely damaged. Production delays. Manufacturers couldn't get products they needed or elements they needed to produce what they needed to produce. What was industry's response? It intensified the focus on supply chain evaluation and supply chain evolution. And we have to ask ourselves today, are we stuck in a paradigm that the CETAs haven't done this and the QCs haven't done that, whatever? Or are we rather saying to ourselves, What is our evolution as an industry? And we need to therefore tell the people there. We need to drive new skills development programs, short courses, qualification design. What are those exit level outcomes? What are the learning outcomes? We need to drive that and find ears that will hear us, and they are opening, believe me. So we need to move beyond what hasn't worked and into driving what we believe must work. So the supply chain evolution, and I won't read it all, but we have to start evaluating and investing in long-term supply chain strategies. Next slide, please. We need to also recognize that we cannot anymore only rely on one major supplier, and we are seeing many companies moving to have 3 or 4 or 5 different parties supplying in different partnerships, and businesses becoming more agile and resilient in their supply chain by working with providers who provide new capabilities as a service. Again, is that included in our qualifications, in our skills development programs? Are our professional bodies hearing this? Are they engaging with us as an industry, etc.? And are the quality councils, is SAQA, are the ministries, are the regulators, are the different government departments sitting with us? Are the trade unions listening? Because we don't want to get rid of people, we want to reskill, upskill, and multi-skill them. Next slide. Many people are doubling down on their technology investment. I'm not going to go through that. And they're getting into blockchain technologies, advanced track and trace products are being produced. And people are becoming far more involved in their own world of ordering product, tracking it, getting it, and enjoying it. Workforce and labor, very interesting. An article I read said that within 10 years' time, the majority of people who are truck drivers now will be retired. There are shortages, huge shortages of both white and blue collar workers in the industry. So we have a massive marketing and career development opportunity that we need to engage in and sell the industry and its opportunities and what you can be and do in the work in this industry as a wonderful environment to do all kinds of wonderful things, robotics and you name it, supply chain, automation, whatever your dream is, you can actually be in this industry. So the onset of new technology has fundamentally changed the way supply chains operate globally, and consumers are becoming more demanding. And this is leading to supply chains changing and evolving more and more quickly at a faster rate. So operations are more focused on technology and innovations, which young people love. And we need to reskill our existing workers and encourage new people into our industry where we are actually engaging in these new technologies. So technology cannot operate in a silo. It needs workers equipped with the right skills and capabilities. And supply chain and manufacturing operations need a blend of both physical and technological skills. So the demographics, I've mentioned Generation Z, who will increasingly become part of the active workforce in the near future. How are we calling them into our environment? How are we motivating them? What are we showing about ourselves? We have a huge role to play, and we need to be proactively engaging everybody out there to get the type of qualifications, knowledge, skills, experience, etc., that we need to really capture the imagination of Generation Z. So there are some solutions that I've put out there from a particular article I read. Operations should be flexible and resilient. Technology should be effectively utilized. There must be capability to adapt to digital operations. Fleet management and supply chain networks must be responsive to customer demands. Collaboration and supplier partnerships need to be monitored for risk, and we need to de-risk the supply chain and identify training and employ new generations. There are 9 principles of capacity building. Very quickly, we can all do it. We must do it. We need to ask the right questions, value the organization's unique history and culture as we capacity build, but build in new. People resist change. but we need to work with that and bring those people together in a very new and different way. Relational agency, Professor Anne Edwards writes about it, and you can go and have a look at that. And remember, capacity building takes time. So thank you. My last slide says we must make this road by walking it reflectively, responsibly, and accountably. Thank you very much. And thank you, Harry, for working the slides there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shirley. This was very interesting. And thank you for sharing your knowledge with us and preparing for this. We really appreciate it. And between everything, you had to move to the Western Cape. So thank you very much for spending some time preparing. Ladies and gents, we're going to do the panel discussion now. And I just want to pull up our program so that we can see. All right, so could we kindly have Melanie, Nadia Pariachi, Juliette Lee, Shirley Lloyd, and Charles Day. You can kindly unmute yourself and switch on your cameras. I really appreciate that. And we can have panel discussion.
Thanks, Harry.
All right, ladies and gents, you can use the raise your hand function. You'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a reactions option. So you can go there and you can raise your hand and it will recognize you and you can unmute yourself and ask a question. So now it's the opportunity to do so. You can ask a question, obviously, for one panel, member of the panel or to the panel as a whole. Charles agreed to facilitate. Thank you, Charles.
Charles has got a question for Melanie, please. Melanie, how much are your training programs funded? To what extent are your training programs funded by the CETA? And how easy do you find it to access funds from your CETA?
Thanks for the question, Charles. In terms of the program that I presented today, our driver curriculum is fully funded in-house. But we do have partnerships with some of our CETAs with regards to learnerships and the workplace experience as well as internships. We do try and capitalize on the application process when DGs do come out. But I must say sometimes it's a really hard target to achieve. In some instances, we've been told that if we do not have 50 or more people that we're willing to capacitate, it's highly unlikely that we'll get the DGs. And in other cases, we've got as low as 10 people on an internship. So I wouldn't say we have 100% partnerships on all programs, but there is here and there pockets where we know that our objectives align with the CETA or TITA's alignment on strategy on their side. Thanks.
Thanks, Melanie.
Thanks, Charles.
Seems the people are stunned again by the presentations.
Yeah. Absolutely confused.
Charles, maybe if we can do the closing comments from each of the panelists and then you kindly closing the session for us.
Okay, thanks. First of all, I'd like to thank the participants for staying with us for so long. We didn't lose a great deal of people, and from my point of view, I've never had so much to think about as what I was given today. Every speaker had something new to think about and to look at, and I think that's really the whole objective of the Transport Forum, to get people with some expertise together, addressing a subject and giving us some insights which we need in order to function better in an organization. So to Shirley, your research into our industry was absolutely fabulous. Thank you. Juliet, of course, you have rapidly become an expert on training methodology. And the fact that you're a very creative person means that industry gets a heck of a lot of benefit from the fact that you not only stay abreast of training technology, but you implement it within your company as soon as possible. And Melanie, thank you very much. You know, Unitrans obviously is leading the way in reducing accidents, improving road safety, and doing it in a way that what appealed to me is the fact that it wasn't imposed on your people. Your people were brought into the process, and I found that very, very impressive. So thank you very much for that, Melanie. And also our previous panelists, Tulsia and John Harris, great thanks to you, and thanks to everybody. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Charles. Really appreciate your facilitation and mentorship. I really appreciate that. Can we have closing remarks? I'm going to do it on my screen. First Juliet, then Shirley, and then Melanie, and then Charles can then close the session. So Juliet, thank you.
Thanks, Harry. Yes, I think my only closing remark is, you know, never stop becoming qualified for what you do. So always look at what the future holds and make sure you align to it. There is so much opportunity, especially in a country that's faced with so much economic turmoil. There's still a lot of opportunity. And yes, the responsibility is on each and every one of us to start that and really become that community of learning and taking that forward.
Thank you, Juliet. Shirley.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you again. And I think we have an incredibly important industry. If you look at the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Program, the ERRP of the government, you look at the district development model, you have a look at where this particular industry fits. It is vital, central to every single aspect of implementing the ERRP successfully. So I would encourage this industry to go and read those documents and get to know what your particular area is. And in your own district, wherever you are placed, have a look at what the district development model is, get involved, and you are actually central to successful implementation of the ERRP. So good luck. I think it's an exciting industry, and grab that technology and all of those things and get on with it. I think you're a fabulous sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Really appreciate that. Melanie.
Thank you, Harry. I think from my side, you know, just listening to the presentations today, I think as someone sitting in corporate, it can be quite intimidating with all this information around us, you know, when it comes to capacity building and what providers can do, and also looking at our learning landscapes and how complicated that can be for someone not in the space. But I think the key point here is that we need to identify the highest risk to your business and be able to start small. I think it starts small and work your way through that solution, and make sure it's effective, make sure you're measuring it right so that you are driving return for the business. Because I think sometimes as HR capital people or training people, we often don't speak business language and link up to strategy in the way that we should. So that's just one side. And the other is that the change does start with each of us. You know, there's so many angles to this and so many areas of accountability, but we can take that first step and make sure that we are helping our organizations and our communities reach that potential that we need to see to thrive in the future. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Melanie. That's wise words. Thank you so much for your support and contribution. From a transport forum, thank you to all our sponsors. We really appreciate your support in making this possible. And for our mentor for today, Charles Day, please close the session for us. Thank you very much.
Good. So in closing, I just want to quote briefly from Mahatma Gandhi, who said, live as if you will die tomorrow. Live as if you will die tomorrow. Learn as if you will live forever. So thank you for that. Thank you again. And cheers. Bye, people.
Thanks, Charles. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Keep well.